All right, good morning. Happy Friday the 13th. We have today's, try not to be too scary. Today we have our Land Use and Sustainability Committee meeting. I am joined by my colleagues, Commissioner Fernandez, Commissioner Richardson, and Commissioner Samuelin. Some housekeeping items. I am told we're going to defer items 1, items 3, and items 10. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Anything else?
Yep, I've got a few more announcements, Mr. Chair. Item number 7 is being deferred to the June 1 meeting as well. Item 10 is being deferred to the July 7th meeting. You just mentioned that. Item 12, our CRO has asked if that item could be taken after 10:30 a.m. because she's on a tour of Sunset Harbor. And then the last announcement is under deferred items, item number 21, which is the 6th Street overlay. That is going to be deferred to July 7th. On the agenda it said June 1, but it's being deferred to the July 7th meeting. And then lastly, I did leave hard copies on each of your chairs of the addendum item number 25, which pertains to the Alton Road Gateway regulations and the Miami Beach Community Health Center. That went out last night. It was published on Novus late last night, and I sent everybody some PDF copies last night, but I did print out a hard copy for you and left it on each of your desks. And that's it for the announcements, Mr. Chair.
Okay, great. Colleagues,
one other thing. I'm sorry, Commissioner Minor, I spoke to him this morning. He is participating in the meeting via Zoom, so whenever his items come up, he'll be participating via Zoom.
Okay, wonderful. Welcome, Commissioner Minor. Colleagues, anything else you want to maybe take out of order, defer, withdraw?
Mr. Chair, there are a couple people here for item number 2, so if that's convenient, I'd love to take that up.
I'm fine taking any sense of how long that'll take, that discussion?
I think it can go relatively expeditiously.
Do you want to run with it?
Sure.
Okay, we'll take number 2 just because we can get some folks out of here, and then we're going to take up, I think, probably the most substantive one this morning.
Sure. Let me just introduce it and then recognize the administration, my colleagues, and the applicant as well. We all know transient uses, hotels, and short-term rentals can be intense and have impact on our neighborhoods. This is a good news story. This is an opportunity to go to the residents in a referendum and say, would they like to take a certain swath of Ocean Drive and keep height the same, keep FAR the same, but take what is used as a hotel and turn it into residential? So that's the punchline. I welcome comments from my colleagues and however you'd like to take it, Mr. Chair, but that's the headline.
So just so that I understand, and colleagues, if you want to jump, this would, if we're so inclined to pursue this would be something that would go to voters?
Yes.
So is this time sensitive given that we have an election coming up?
It is indeed. We did a dual referral because of that time sensitivity.
Just working on the calendar, are you envisioning and going to push for an August or November?
November.
Okay. So then we have a little bit of time to chew on this. Okay. Colleagues, do you want to hear from Mr. Kasdan?
Yes.
Okay.
Mr. Chair, good morning. Neeson Kasdan and Chris Pinellas with Ackerman representing the owners of the South Beach Marriott Stanton. Also with me is Colin Gorsuch, who is the Director of Development of Key International. I'll be very brief. Commissioner Samuelin very succinctly laid out exactly why this is being done and what is being done. And frankly, how this is helping in a major way move the city, and in particular the South of 5th neighborhood, which has strongly endorsed this initiative, in the direction it wants to be of being more of a residential neighborhood with and less intense activity there. So my clients, they are Deed family. Some of you may know them. They built the South Beach Marriott in the late 90s, was completed in 2000. They were pioneers at that time because no one was really investing in a property like that south of 5th Street. And they have owned and operated the hotel ever since then. But they have decided that they think it is a better use of the property today if they went residential. And in order to do that, they would have to build a new building. But in order to build a new building that makes sense and is economically viable, they would like to retain the height and the FAR of the existing hotel. Now, when it was built, it allowed FAR of up to 3.0. The FAR was subsequently reduced. So this would allow, very simply, if you have a hotel property in the RPS 4 district, which is south of 5th, which are those properties generally on the ocean south of 5th, if you converted it from a hotel, demolished it, and built a residential building, you could maintain the same FAR and height. The height is actually the same height as is allowed today. That's quite simply it. We have a very brief presentation if you want to see it. Okay. Yeah. We can get IT to put the presentation on the screen. There we go. I think you all are pretty familiar with this property. That's the Marriott there. And included in the Marriott is a two-story contributing building, which will be retained in any new development of the site. If we go to the next slide. The architects who've been chosen for this project are Olsen Kundig. They are globally renowned cutting-edge architects who specialize in the kind of residential and also resort product that you would see in a city like this. I'm not going to spend a lot of time with their work, but we can share that with you at another time. Next slide. And this is a rendering, conceptual rendering of what it would look like. This is not in any way a final architectural plan or concept, but it gives you the idea of utilizing the same height and the same floor area as the existing hotel. They would have a low-rise building. Currently, they're contemplating 39 residential units in the building. As you know, the hotel use has no density whatsoever, and the current hotel, I think, has 224 units. And being that this is in the Ocean Beach Historic Overlay, the land use limits the number of units as residential to 60 units. So by any means, when you make this change and to residential, you're going to significantly decrease the density on the property. And this gives you an idea of how they will have a project, medium rise, looking out over the ocean, looking out over the park, and it will just be a very nice contribution to the neighborhood. As I mentioned as well, and you've received letters from them, SOFNA has unanimously endorsed this and is very excited about it. And I'd like to thank Commissioner Samuelin for sponsoring this. And if you have any questions, we're happy to answer.
Good morning.
Good morning.
So there's not going to be any change in the height. There's not going to be any change in the FAR that is currently on the property, right?
Correct.
But it's different from what I guess the current overlay district is, right?
After the hotel was built, the FAR was reduced from 3.0 to 2.0. So the hotel was built when 3.0 FAR was allowed, and that's what we're.
And the proposal would be to take down the building, the current building, and put up a new structure.
Yes.
Is there parking in the current building? Do you know?
There is.
And would there be a plan to put parking in the new structure? The reason I ask is there's a real shortage of parking south of 5th right now, especially in that area. And I'm just wondering if there will be a loss of parking spaces and how, or if you know.
Well, I mean, Colin can speak. There certainly will be all required parking will be provided in the building. And these are, of course, going to be luxury units. And so they're just in addition, from a marketing perspective, you need to have adequate parking. So, and it will not be a hotel use. And so all the spillover that you get from having a hotel will not be impacting the neighborhood either.
Yeah, the reason I ask the question is because I don't know if the parking in the hotel now is being used for the surrounding community, because that area is very dense and there's a huge need for parking.
In fact, if anything, I mean, candidly, I think one thing that happened as the tourism has evolved in Miami Beach in the last few years with some properties. What also winds up happening is that you rent out a room to someone, and you wind up having 4, 5, 6 people in the room, and their cars are probably spilling up throughout the neighborhood. And so we're all familiar with sort of the turn that some sectors of the hospitality market has taken. So if anything, this should be, in a very dramatic way, improve any impacts from spillover use and extra parking demand. Another thing that will enable as well is, you see it's not part of the legislation because it's all going to go through the Historic Preservation Board for site plan approval, but they also have an ability to make the new building engage much better with the street at the pedestrian level rather than what they have now. So, I mean, this is a great opportunity for the community and the neighborhood as well.
Thank you. And to the sponsor, what is your plan today? Do you want to send this back to the commission with a favorable recommendation?
Yes, that would be my motion, Commissioner Richardson, and I would just want to confirm with Tom that that's exactly what we need to do, and if he wants to just quickly opine on the administration's view.
Yeah, just from a sequencing standpoint, this particular proposal has two components. One is the LDR amendment, and the other is the amendment to the comp plan to increase the intensity for this specific type of conversion. When this was referred on April 6th by the commission, it was a dual referral, and we've actually already noticed it for the May 24th planning board meeting. And so our plan was actually to have it go to the planning board on May 24th and then bring it to the commission for first reading on June 22nd so that they would have adequate time to have the ballot question approved in time for the November election. So if you are inclined to recommend in favor of this, then it would be an endorsement. We would bring it to planning board, and then you would see it at first reading on June 22nd. The administration is supportive of this. There really is not going to be any net increase in FAR because technically they could convert the building now to a residential use with less units, but apparently the design of the building makes it such that the units would not be ideal, and they would rather reconstruct what they have existing so that it can be a much more marketable residential building.
So I'll second the motion with the favorable recommendation, and then let's get it to planning and then get it back to the commission.
Nick?
Mr. Chairman, I see Commissioner Minor has his hand up.
Okay, yeah, please. Commissioner Minor.
Thanks. Thank you, Chair. Quick question. How will short-term rentals be addressed?
I can answer that. The proposer has proffered to place a requirement in the ordinance that would prohibit short-term rentals via covenant, and that was a proffer by the developer.
Great, thank you.
Okay.
Good morning, everyone, and good morning, commissioners, members of this committee. My name is Matthew Galtanoff, and I'm speaking as a resident of the South of Fifth Neighborhood Association. I'm also running for the South of Fifth Neighborhood Association right now. We're having an election with some open seats on the board. During the campaign down in that neighborhood, I've spoken with dozens of residents who live in the neighborhood. And as you're all aware, we have a housing crisis in the city, in this county, and frankly all over the country. And you know, one of the things that's been brought up is many long-term residents who live in this neighborhood are being either priced out with rents doubling, or their long-term landlords are selling their place, and instead of renting out, the new owners want to live there themselves. So you have a policy decision today, right? It's not just we want to allow an increase in FAR to what they're, I guess we'll call it non-conforming uses right now, but you have the opportunity to set a maximum of the unit size so that perhaps these could be full-time residents that are living here. What's proposed, or what was presented to the neighborhood association, were 39 units at an average size of nearly 4,000 square feet. These aren't for people to live. These live full-time. These are third, fourth, fifth homes for ultra-high net worth individuals. So you all up here today have the power to perhaps steer this in another direction, right? The Stanton Hotel today is not a problem for the neighborhood. I met many people at the playground right next door. These are $500, $600, $700, $800 a night hotel rooms. These aren't $50 a night hotel rooms here. So just to be clear, The crisis that we have south of 5th, Flamingo Park, all around North Beach, all around this neighborhood, it needs more housing for people to live, not for a couple weeks out of the year. So given the opportunity that you could make perhaps more amendments to this ordinance, look at maximum unit sizes. If there's only 60 units allowed there today, perhaps look at modifying the comprehensive plan to allow more units. That helps build community, and that's what makes South of 5th a really successful mixed income neighborhood. Thank you.
Thank you. Russell Galbert for the record, and I also live south of 5th. I've made it my home after living in almost every other district in Miami Beach. I think what Mayor Kasdan's suggestion of his clients, what they want to do, is absolutely spot on. I wouldn't want it to be more than 39 units. And while I don't always agree with Commissioner Samulin, in this instance I agree with him, he's got a winner here. I think that this is exactly the type of people we want. The intensity and density is very minor. I think to replace a hotel of that size with something like this, with a world-renowned architectural team like it is just wonderful. So I really commend you and pushing this along and moving it ahead. Thank you so much.
Yes, hi, thank you, Daniel Seraldo, with the Miami Design Preservation League. One question I have, we haven't seen the project yet, we're going to be meeting with them soon, but one concern I have just in listening today is whether or not it's possible, if the voters approve it, could the height be increased? Because that did happen, as we all know, at the North Beach Town Center. So what I'm just thinking is, if we want to get it passed, that maybe there's some language in the ballot question that could say, at the current height, because I think there's some concern from certain, people that there might be something happening after, and just an idea for you guys to consider. Thanks.
Fair question. Neeson, you want to address that? Are you proffering any? I mean, I know the renderings don't show a skyscraper, but theoretically, you could just build a tall, skinny building.
The height is limited to 100 feet on that side of Ocean Drive anyway. The only way...
But that's not by charter, right?
No, it's by ordinance. The only way that could change is if you vote to change and increase the height. So we're not contemplating that at all. But, I'd be willing to bet a lot of money that this commission will not increase the height on the east side of Ocean Drive, south of 5th.
Colleagues, do you want to?
Yeah. First off, thank you, Mr. Galbert. You started my meeting well when you said we were on the same page, at least on this one. Matthew, first I want to congratulate you on getting in the arena and running for SOFNA. That is wonderful, and the residents are always well served by having choice. Just to be clear, the FAR of what exists today and what can be built will not change. I just want to be 100% clear. Also, in terms of unit size, what I would say is the SOFNA board looked at it. This was a community-driven process, and they endorsed the proposal as is. So I respect your view, but at the end of the day, I always give a little extra deference to the neighborhood association. So, Mr. Chair, I believe we have a motion and a second. Oh, hold on, one more down
I'm
there.
sorry, there's one speaker on Zoom, Wayne Roberts.
Good morning, Wayne.
Good morning, gentlemen. I just want to express my support for this project. I think this is exactly the type of project that is good for the community. It provides residential housing. It updates the area in an effective way without adding any density. In fact, subtracting density. So I am thankful for this developer and the people involved in this project, and I wish them well. Thank you.
No, I have nothing to say. I just wanted to mention that Diego Ardid, principal of the company that owns the property, is here if you had any questions. Yeah, I've been working with Diego for many, many years, He was also responsible, I don't know, probably 17 years ago for the redo of the Eden Rock Hotel and its expansion. So he and his family have been invested in Miami Beach and doing work here for many, many years.
Come on up.
I want to go that way.
So you own the property and developed the property,
We did, yes.
and then Marriott's the flag that.
That's right.
Yeah.
And when we brought the flag back in late '90s, it felt like the right fit. But obviously today, that part of the beach has changed a lot, and we think that this is the direction to take it.
Yeah, I mean, I'll tell you, just as a almost 20-year resident south of Fifth, and moved a couple years ago to Sunset Harbor, and I'm still torn. Which is my favorite neighborhood? I remember when you opened the Marriott. You were a pioneer. A lot of people, I think, probably said you were a little nuts to do it, but it really contributed a lot and continues to contribute a lot to that neighborhood. I just had friends stay there this weekend who came in for F1. It's a delightful property, well located. I'm torn on this because generally this is the kind of project that I support for lots of reasons. But my concern, to what Matt was talking about, this is happening throughout the city where, you're replacing great assets, whether they're apartment rentals or hotels, and then we're building lots of luxury properties, which can be very good for the city. It de-intensifies areas, particularly south of Fifth, like Neeson said. You're going to take 200 plus units, make it, less than 60 units. They're going to be third, fourth home buyers here. It contributes lots of money to the city's coffers from the tax base, de-intensifies the neighborhood. So if I was a property owner south of Fifth, I'd champion this because it's going to raise my property values and de-intensify the neighborhood. But I also think ultimately if this continues, it's going to make that neighborhood extremely boring, right? And for all the reasons people move there, you're going to all of a sudden wake up one day and say, wow, I got no neighbors, there's no life in the parks, no one lives here anymore. Mixed use, different income levels, different retail experiences is what makes neighborhoods. And if we continue down this path, I think we're going to regret it. So I'm torn on this one because I think it's a cool project. I don't know you, but just what you've already done for our community over the decades, I admire what you've done. But I want to just call attention to this kind of thing that we're doing. And I know the South of Fifth neighbors. I know what their motivation, some of their motivation is here. They're not sometimes thrilled with the folks that are guests at that hotel. And so if they can get rid of them, they would like to do that. And I'm torn about that. This is the kind of stuff you don't speak about, but I know what's going on. So I'm going to be a no. But I wish you well. You're going to get the support, and I think probably this will pass with voters. But just as a matter of, I don't like what I think is behind some of the support the SOFNA board is, the motivation behind doing this. And I also think that, if we keep doing this to neighborhoods, we're going to wake up one day and find Miami Beach a boring place to live, and we're going to eviscerate what are great world-class neighborhoods like south of Fifth.
Commissioner, can I, obviously, I just want to respond just briefly. I understand, and we've had probably discussions over the years about the need to reinforce and support the middle class in this community. A couple of things. Number one, we have to understand it's not going to be happening on the oceanfront properties. Number two, we do have an opportunity to upgrade either both residential and hotel on oceanfront properties, and that's to the good of the community. Where I agree with you and have been advocating for 25 years is we do need to look at increasing density to facilitate workforce housing, to really be serious about transportation improvements like light rail so that we don't have to you either have poor people live here or rich people, and people who work here can't get here. So I'm with you. I don't think this is a not really part of that, in my opinion.
I agree. Look, I not to disparage this particular project or the property owner at all. I think this is going to be a very nice project. I'm sad to see the hotel potentially leave the community. I think it's an asset. This is more of a matter of principle. I just want to throw a no vote out there so that we don't just keep doing this, because, you know, we talk about building workforce housing, but we're not doing it. We talk about mixed use, a diverse neighborhood in terms of economic levels, but we do very little about it. This would not be a great property to do it on, okay? So that's why generally I would support this one, because you don't have to do large mixed use affordable housing on the ocean. That's not necessarily where it always needs to be. But we have to actually do something somewhere at some point. Density is part of that, and I've challenged my colleagues to bring forward FAR increases that we could take to the voters for more affordable workforce housing in the community. We have yet to do that, but you know, we're quick to do it for luxury housing, but we won't do it for workforce housing. Because what would happen I promise, if this project was south of 5th, say we want to build 200 units, you know, of workforce housing south of 5th, it would be shot down. But hey, a 30-unit ultra luxury, great. So we got to put our money where our mouth is and do more like that.
I agree, Mr. Chair. Yeah. Well, after my colleague.
So thank you, and I too think we need more workforce housing. But I think, as you said, and Chair, you said as well, this particular property, oceanfront, is not the place to focus that. You know, my concern is parking, not just with what's going on the property, but in the area. In particular, there is a real shortage of parking in that area. So that's something that, and I don't know the economics of mixing parking that could be used by a valet service with this particular project. But, you know, the truth is that these projects are driven by economics. And so if you had a mixed-use building, you would need more height. You would need something else in order to make the numbers work. But what you and your client may want to do before it gets back to the commission is maybe proffer some sort of public benefit where you would make a contribution to a workforce housing fund because we're going to be adding workforce housing, obviously, in Collins Park. There'll be a proposal coming in on the Byron Carlisle that'll include a workforce housing component, and we're looking at other things. So that may be something that your client may want to contribute to see an advancement in that area in the city. So thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Chair, thank you. I'm going to be supportive of this. I think it's important to make this transition as much as we can. I think so many of us, I think this entire body, has dedicated a lot of effort into creating a transition from hotel uses to residential uses and moving away from what is, you know, what could be a very volatile market and very dangerous for our own economy here in Miami Beach, which is the directly tourist-related market. And so I'm going to be supporting this. I like us finding ways to incentivize residential over hotels, and especially when it's the market that's coming forward and the one that's proffering that use. So I'll be supporting it. Thank you.
Was someone on the Zoom call?
Commissioner Minor, yes.
Okay, hey, Commissioner Minor.
Thank you, Chair. One other question. We've been focused on this property. If this zoning change goes through and approved by the voters, how many other properties could potentially be impacted and take advantage of this zoning change?
I had the same question. Is this an overlay for the entire South of 5th neighborhood?
This is specific to the RPS 4 district, but would only apply to existing hotels that are legal nonconforming with FAR. I believe the only other hotel project that is legal nonconforming in terms of FAR is 101 Ocean Drive, which I believe is a Hilton. All the rest of the buildings that are in the RPS 4 district are residential apartments.
And the 101 building is half condo, half hotel?
Correct. That's apartment hotel.
Mr. Gal, but you own a bunch of units here, don't you? Which one? At the 101 Ocean. I'm not sure. The answer is yes. I can answer for you.
That's a tough question to ask him what he owns, you know.
Oh, boy. Just out of curiosity, so, like, just off of memory, like the Saxony Hotel, What's the situation? Do you know that there's a beautiful property, the Saxony Hotel? Is that a timeshare or is that an actual hotel?
The Faena?
No, not the Saxony. What's the one on 4th and Ocean?
Oh, the Arlington. The Arlington?
No, it begins with an S.
But the Arlington...
That's not
the Savoy, I mean.
the Savoy,
The
but
Savoy.
that's not legal non-conforming in terms of FAR.
Right.
So that wouldn't apply.
But is that a hotel, or is that a timeshare?
It's been a hotel, but it is, as Tom explained, it's well under existing FAR. It's under existing FAR, so it's not non-conforming.
I believe it's a hotel right now. It's licensed as a hotel
I don't
right
know why
now.
that hotel doesn't do more. It's a beautiful property. Okay, but that wouldn't apply here. They wouldn't build a
Wasn't it
luxury
originally
property.
the Arlington? Wasn't that
The Arlington and the Savoy. Yeah,
I
both
know
buildings are
it's
still
Savoy,
up.
Savoy, yeah.
It's where
You're
Woody's
dating
used to be.
Yeah. Okay.
It's where I had my first
It's a great property.
victory party when it was Woody's in 1991.
Amazing.
Mr.
Okay.
Chair,
Yeah.
just a point of information. If the property ever wanted to revert back to, let's say, a hotel use, and I know that that's not the intention here, but I'm just thinking
It couldn't. It would be
condos.
It would be.
we had to go back to the voters at that point.
No,
because the
well,
FAR change that we're doing.
Yeah. The FAR is only being allowed for residential.
And can our attorney confirm that?
That's right.
Okay.
Yeah.
Perfect. Thank you.
So, Tom, maybe before it gets back to the commission, you could look at all the properties in the district and just let us know if any other properties would be affected.
The only other one that would be affected potentially would be 101 Ocean
Right.
Drive. However, if that is an apartment hotel, it may not be affected by this because this is specific to hotels, which is a separately defined building. So this is that would be the only other building that's legal non-conforming in terms of FAR. That is a non-residential building.
Okay, thanks. Okay, so that'll pass 2-1.
So that the motion was made by Commissioner Samuel and seconded by Commissioner Richardson 2-1. Okay.
Thank you.
All right. Okay. All right. So I think the next topic or the next agenda item will be item number 25, probably the one that we'll spend the most time on this morning. The rest might go quickly. So what I'd like to do with this item, I don't know who's going to tee it up. Eric will tee it up. What I'd like to do, I spoke to you this morning, Eric, about this. There's a lot of detail and a lot of things to hash out. This is also something that if we approve it, would have to also go to the voters. We are looking possibly at an August timeline. So, Nick, help me out here in terms of decisions made today to get it out of committee so that we can ultimately, if we're so inclined to take it to the full commission, we're on a tight timeline. So, Eric, what would you like from us this morning, assuming we want to try to make an August deadline?
So, Commissioner, what we would need today is we would need specific feedback on the items that are in the ordinance, specifically the FAR incentive related to the Gateway District, Overlay District. We would need input from you on the maximum height for a second residential building within the Gateway Overlay. And we would need feedback from you on the location of the residential portion of any additional building, and the feedback on the park expansion. If I could just, those are really the four things that we need feedback on today. Obviously, just to set this up a little bit, this was an ask that came to us from the county and the development team. The county, which operates and maintains the community health center at 710, 720 Alton Road, is looking at some, relatively expensive improvements that need to be done as part of a 40-year recertification on that building. And I think that the development team came to them with an idea or a concept or an opportunity to potentially swap properties between 710, 720 Alton Road to move the community health center across the street to a property at 663 Alton Road. That does a couple of things. It gives an opportunity for the community health center to be, I believe, closer to the folks that it serves, closer to the parking lot that allows people to park at 5th and Alton and access the community health center, since there's no parking on the current site. And it also gives us an opportunity to improve the northern boundary of our new park there at 600 Alton. So this concept came to the city. Obviously, there's a financial component to this deal. We went out and got appraisals on the 2 pieces of land that would be swapped between the county and the development team. We've looked at costs associated with building a brand new community health center facility. We still have some distance that needs to be made up because the development team is putting a lot of money into the new health center. So one of the things that we're talking about today is if we put to the voters a referendum to give some bonus FAR in this gateway district, would that cover the additional cost that the development team is shouldering to build the new community health center, and would that be equitable? We have gone back and forth many times with the development team. Obviously, we've met with many of the neighbors. There are still concerns about the height associated with an additional residential tower there. And I hesitate to call it a tower because 150 feet is really more of a mid-rise building. It's similar in height to the Federation Towers building that is directly adjacent to it. And we feel like if that particular tower could get nestled into the corner at 8th and Alton, the height could get mitigated significantly by the existence of the Federation Towers building. But that being said, we're still massaging this, trying to get the building into the right location. Obviously, the neighbors, you're going to hear from some of them today, have some concerns about density. The development team has proffered a cap on the residential use of the property at 120 units, which is very similar to what they would be allowable by right if they were to get the community health center property and aggregate it with a piece of property that they have just to the north. And ultimately, I would love to let them present their proposal and answer any questions that you have.
Colleagues? Okay. Yeah, so great job summarizing it, Eric. I just want to acknowledge you and your team's efforts to negotiate this, to get it to where it's at today. I think we all got our packets late last night. I only had a little bit of time to review it, to talk to you this morning. My 2 cents, I'm the sponsor of it. I think there's a lot of potential here. Remember, this is a county ask, not a developer ask. My willingness to sponsor this is because I had the opportunity to go visit the community health center. I think most of us have gone, hopefully, to view it, and I was appalled. I was really saddened and horrified by the conditions there. This service is the most vulnerable in our community, and frankly, it's outdated, to be kind, and it's very to not be kind. It's third world, and I didn't like that. Folks needing medical attention should have access to a facility that's every bit as nice as Mount Sinai Baptist, any place any one of us would go. So that was my motivation for doing this. In order to make this happen, there's a lot of moving parts, and there's economics involved. So unless the city or the county wants to spend a lot of money to do a new facility, we're going to have to partner with the private sector. It just so happens the owner of this is Mr. Galbett, who also owns property across the street, who also has developed, I think, a great park, who also developed the Baptist property. So, the stars align. Now, what we're going to be challenged to do is try to negotiate a deal that residents will be satisfied with, that has good economics for the city, and then more importantly develops a world-class care facility for our most vulnerable residents. So that's the color I would add to everything you did.
If I could just make one, first I apologize for the lateness of the memo. I take full responsibility for that. We were negotiating right up until 5 o'clock yesterday when this went out. So, I realized this was a lot to digest last evening. But I also do want to mention that in the memo and in the ordinance, the range of setbacks for the residential piece, the residential tower, from West Avenue was set at 140 to 175 feet. It should have said 140 to 160 feet. We think that the 160 feet setback from West Avenue is more than sufficient to protect the interests of the property owners there.
Can I ask a couple? Yeah, let me ask a couple of questions, and then we can hear from the potential development team. Originally, this started as an office tower, and then I just heard the other day that it had switched to a residential. So when did that happen? And maybe that's a better question for Mr. Galbett, I don't know, but I didn't know about that until recently. So do you want to comment on that?
So as we've been going through the process, we've been trying to settle in on uses as well as physical constraints. And one of the things that we've heard multiple times in the community is they don't want to see a proliferation of a lot of residential uses. They didn't want to see a proliferation of too much density. So the concept of mixed use, office and residential, I felt, and I think the team felt, was a little bit of a compromise so that we weren't having all one type of use that was creating a lot of additional traffic, and hopefully you can capture some internal trips within a mixed-use property like that.
So it's going to, right now what you're negotiating is a mixed-use property?
It's a combination of residential and office component, yes.
Okay. And then the other thing is part of the deal with the tower at 500 and the park was there's some sort of commercial or retail space that the developer has as a matter of right now if we do nothing. So can you describe, because I think early on there was an offer to exchange that right for this new opportunity. So can you describe what they have right now as a matter of right? I think it's inside the park.
So they have a parcel that's approximately 33,000 square feet of land on the southeast corner of the park. And that is currently allowed to be built to a maximum height of 40 feet. And I believe there's 11 or 12,000 square feet of FAR that could be used for commercial purposes that was always intended to activate the park. So if that property were to become part of the park and the commercial activation that we would like to see in the park moves to the northern end as part of this potential development, then we could expand the park.
And is that generally, that area is generally where that sales office is now?
Correct.
So I'd like to hear from the developer. Good morning.
Commissioner Ariola, Chairman, and members of the board. Russell Galbett on behalf of the property owner. Let me say this to you is that I've lived here all my life,
and I'm very happy with some of the magical places that we've made on the beach. Many of them public service, starting with the Jewish Community Center, the Bessie D. Galbert Mikveh, the Hyman Galbert Torah Center, and more recently, the Sixth Street Park, which was really as a result of working together with all of you, especially Commissioner Ricky Ariola, who, without whose efforts, that park would not have happened either. There is no doubt that the health clinic needs a new home. There is no doubt that that responsibility rests on your shoulders and on the county's shoulders. It services 6,000 residents on Miami Beach of socioeconomic disadvantaged. There is no reason that it does not meet the standards of the Baptist Health or any other facility that we get our medical health care from. It's inexcusable that it's the condition that it's in, and it's inexcusable that a great portion of the building has been condemned. The issue there is the sinking foundation, which will continue to sink. 4 years ago, they pumped in concrete to stop the sinking, and it did not help. It's continued to sink. And there is basically no way that they can repair, replace, or ever get it to be federally certified in the current location without closing it. 200,000 health visits happen there a year. My partner in this transaction, David Martin, really doesn't want any part of it. He's very happy walking away. It's funny. This is really a community service. We originally expected to have some 400 units in residence. We thought it was very reasonable. 300 feet. We went down to 250 feet. The current height allowed today is 75 feet. That's the current height. So what are you doing? You're allowing us 14 stories to go to 150 feet? The Federation Tower is 127 feet, although Eric will tell you it's 109 feet. It's not. It's 127 feet. So what are we talking about? We're talking about 6,000 people who visit 200,000 times that clinic on Miami Beach, that cross Alton Road, including 2 blind people who get their health care, most of which live in the Flamingo Park area. It's not about postponement. It's not about anything else. It's about doing what's right for the community. If you feel that you don't want to see this, it's okay by me. I got plenty of other things to do, and it's a small project for me. Believe me, it's a small project for me. I'm doing it because I actually believe it's in the best interest of the park. It's in the best interest of the community, the neighborhood, and it's a neighborhood that I'm going to be part of, just as I'm part of Fifth Street. I lived in Mid Beach the most part of my life. My other family members have lived in North Beach. You know, we came to Miami Beach and South Beach. When my grandfather came in 1929, he was one of the original founders of the Beth Jacobs Synagogue on 3rd and Washington Avenue. If you go there today, the original plaque will have his name as being one of the founding members of that synagogue. I went home on Miami Beach to that community. And I tell you honestly in my heart, we need to build a new health facility. It's your responsibility to do it. We're offering you a no-cost opportunity to our community to do it, just like we did with the JCC, just like we did with the park. This is an opportunity to be appreciated and to be thanked for. And I would ask you, we're not going to finish all the details today. Eric wants us 160 feet away from the Floridian. We only want to be 140 feet away. Maybe there's a compromise, 150 feet, maybe. But, I don't know that that's possible. Commissioner Richardson wants us to move it north to be over Federation Towers. Eric and I are working with Federation Towers. So far, we got a big fat go to hell because they're over FAR'd and they're suing the city of Miami Beach because they hired Gene Stearns because you unfairly put the lots together. I mean, there's a whole bunch of stories. So, are we ever going to resolve it with Federation Towers? I have no idea. But I know that Eric has tried. I know that Eric has had numerous calls with the community and with the neighbors. And I appreciate the neighbors and I appreciate their thoughts. And maybe we should hear from them and allow me to come back. But we've always reached solutions. This is going to be a vote of the people. But I would say to you this, delay is the killer. Do not delay. Send it to the full commission. If we can't come out and get a full commission vote on it, and we can't get the people to vote for it, I'm very happy walking away. But I think that to not allow this opportunity to happen would be a terrible mistake.
Can I ask a question? So, Mr. Gallant, you are correct in that months ago when we talked about this, I asked you if you could look at that corner of 8th and Alton. It is having a surface parking lot there is not the best use of that land. I know it's owned by Federation. It would be far better for, if this is not done now and we move forward, that surface parking lot will be there 50 years from now. This is the opportunity.
You're 100% correct.
So if we don't need to, you may be in the middle of the throes of negotiations, and I don't want anyone to give away their strategy. But if there's anything that I can do to push that along, I will call them.
I think that would help.
I've had one conversation with them. If they think they're going to hold out and build their own tower, if that's the gambit for them, they will not have my support. So we have to look at this as a holistic. We have to look at the entire area, not just that little parking lot. We have a lot of things to accomplish here. The health clinic is incredibly important for the community, incredibly important, and we need to find a way to get it done.
I couldn't agree with you more. Eric has reached out to them. I know you have reached out to them. I have spoken to them on 2 different occasions, and it might help if you have a conversation with their legal counsel. I think their legal counsel has even spoken with the city's legal counsel. They feel that their lots were never combined formally, and that it should not be treated as a single development site, in disagreement with Tom's opinion. So that's the issue there. And they do want to build their own tower. So, but they say they're going to stick within the law. They're entitled to 75 feet. They'll stick to 75 feet, but they don't have any FAR. But if they did say that there were 2 separate lots, then they would have FAR. That's the entire issue. And they're not the important point here. They're just one element to clean up part of this process, which is the 8th Street corner. I would like to clean it up also. I don't think it belongs there like it is. But that's only one element. Regardless of that, it doesn't solve the health clinic issue.
I understand.
Maybe we hear from the neighbors and then I can come back?
Yeah, so if there's members of the public that want to speak on this, Eric, for all 4 of your points, okay, I mean, my primary motivation is to get the community health center built. What I love about it is at no cost to the city, okay? There are some objections from neighbors regarding either the use for residential and or height and location. So I think that's part of what we have to help try to maneuver and negotiate. And then there's an economic component that I think you want to bring to our attention to try to negotiate that with Mr. Galbert.
Yeah, I think ultimately what I don't want to do is put this in a posture that I don't think it's positive for the city. I do think that this project is positive for the city. I think you've heard me say this before, the devil's in the details. And so we're trying to come up with a solution to this very positive project that creates the least amount of ripples throughout the community for the folks that have other interests, we'll say. And so we're trying to toggle a lot of points, residential versus office, height, density, traffic, and all of these things. And I think that we're getting to a place that the development team can live with and that the city can live with. And I'm hoping that we can get to a place where the community can get on board with it also. And I think we're close.
Mr. Galbert, what kind of residential project are you envisioning? Is this rentals, luxury for sale? What are you thinking here?
So let me tell you what our experience has been up to now, and then I'll address all 4 of what I think are the outstanding issues. What we have found, and thank God we've opened our sales office, and sales have been fairly good. What we have found is that there are people who are buying units that really don't plan on making it their own home. My cousin Bruce, who bought a unit, will make it his own home. My brother David will make it his own home. But most of the people there, I would say the vast majority, it's going to be a secondary home. Although I don't know that any of them have primary homes, because they all seem to have many homes. So it might be their domicile and their homestead as well. But so what I believe is, I don't know if this would be a rental or a condo, but I do know that the average size would be of such size that it could be a condo. And that is because we've lowered the density. If it is a condo, then obviously it would probably be the same type of condo where there would be less occupancy there. I would say this is that we have added the commercial component. 2 floors is commercial space because many people in the neighborhood wanted that. And we embraced it, although we didn't want to. And we thought it was fine. We've limited it to the 120 units when we started out with 400 units. Whether it's a rental or condo, we don't know. The 4 issues that continue to be outstanding between the city and us is, and it also involves the county. So there's a lot of different players here in the county and so on. So let me start off with them. One being is the set-off way from West Avenue being 160 feet instead of 140 feet. One of them being 275 feet, the tower portion of the building to be off of 8th Street versus what we want it to be, which is 325 feet. That's a point of contention.
325 feet long.
South, no, not long, but south, wherever the building ends has to be south of 8th Street. It's still north of the Floridian, substantially north of the Floridian, but he would like it to be a little bit further north of the Floridian. The third issue, what he alluded to earlier, was the fact that Tom, for whatever reason, always had a problem with our drive-through on the restaurant corner, and because we had parking spaces in it. And Tom felt that we shouldn't have parking spaces in it, and so on and so forth. So what we've been exploring is to have the park extend and take out that parking that was between the restaurant and the park. And it's that space that's in between. Nobody is suggesting that we not build the 11,000 square foot restaurant. We wouldn't do it as a 2-story, we'd do it as a 1-story because it just works very well with the park. So I think that's the third point of contention. And then the fourth point really comes about from the county. And the county basically says, look, this is such an incredible plan, and we're getting a new health clinic. Why don't we get new equipment in the health clinic? So our position was that was never part of the deal, and it was never spoken about until literally last week for the first time. And I said, why don't you get together with the city and figure out how to buy new equipment? Now, the reality is the plan has always been to take the FF&E, the furniture that is in the old clinic, and move it to the new clinic. So that's a fourth point of contention that will require some dollars. So that's just in the economic perspective that is new on the table. Candidly, all 4 of these issues, except for the park expansion, is new to the table. They weren't there before this week when Eric surprised me with them. So now he may have had them in his mind, that's quite possible, but they certainly were never talked about, and we never talked about the FF&E in the clinic before either. So those are the 4 outstanding issues as I understand.
How much money are we talking about, rough order on the furniture and fixtures?
I don't know, because you're talking about a dental chair that's fully equipped at $150,000, and you're probably looking at a few $1 million.
A couple of million versus 10 million, right? So
no, the clinic is much more expensive than that. You have a federally certified clinic being delivered. So it's like the park that we all thought was $8 million that wound up being $15 million. By the time you added the drainage wells and the city's inspections and the city's permits and everything else.
The elephant and everything else.
No, the elephant was early on. Ricky said we must have her, and that's it. So we got her. So.
Well, we thank you, and thank you for the 15. We appreciate that.
Mr. Chair. Eric, you mentioned mixed use. What is the mix of commercial office versus residential?
So ultimately, that's going to depend upon how large the units are of the 120 residential units. But for sake of argument, we could be looking at 100,000 square feet of office space and the 120 residential units, approximate.
Okay. And then you started to allude to why this is ultimately in the best interest of the community. And so I was dying to hear you sort of summarize that. If you had to give the punchline to the community and residents who maybe have questions, why is this in their interest?
So I think that it's in the interest of the community for a couple of reasons. Number one, I think that this community health center serves a critical need to the community. And if we were to build a new community health center either on its current property or if we were to strike a deal with some other property owner, including the one across the street, we would probably be talking about $15 to $20 million worth of investment that the city or the county would have to put in to deliver a new facility. And I don't know that we have that laying around right now with the list of capital needs that we currently have with the city. The second piece of this is, as wonderful as the services are that are provided by the community health center, the appearance is not so great. And that sitting at the north side of the park doesn't allow, I think, for the best use of that property and the best foot forward for either the health center or for the city. And so I think that having something with some retail activation abutting the park, something that interfaces with the park rather than having the back of house kind of sticking right out into the park space, I think would be a much better kind of fit together.
Yeah, and I agree with Mr. Chair on the importance of delivering those health services. I also agree with you in terms of the aesthetics and how this all should come together. Last question. Ultimately, the voters, if it is the will of this body, will vote. They could vote yes, they could vote no. So what is Plan B?
Plan B, as I understand it from the county, is that they have some of the money that they would need to keep the building that they currently have functioning. I don't know that would get them to be able to reopen the northern section of the building that's currently closed and not being able to be used. So I think that just becomes a long-term funding need for the county or the city to help out with.
The answer is there's no plan B. There is no way to fix the building. It's as simple as that. And they'll tell you that there's a way to fix the building because they think that gives them an upper arm. It doesn't give them an upper arm. Plan B is only to buy a piece of land and fulfill the responsibility of this city body and the commission from the county together to build a new health facility for those people. And that is Plan B, to
Mr.
come up with the money.
You teed up the exact last question I have at this moment. For Plan B, which maybe doesn't exist, who has to do that? Is that a county obligation?
It's a moral obligation of everyone.
Oh, that's a good answer.
It is.
But, Eric.
Ultimately, this is a county deal with the community health center to provide those services, and ultimately the county or the leaseholder of the property, whoever ends up, needing it more and having to cry uncle first, would have to somehow come up with those funds.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair? So, first and foremost, I just want to highlight how important the clinic is for our community. And perhaps many people don't know it. One of the most essential services provided by this clinic are the services for HIV patients provided by Ryan White federal grant funds through Miami-Dade County to them for prescription, for medical case management, for outpatient services, for mental health counseling. This is an incredibly important facility for HIV patients in 33139, which is one of the zip codes with the highest concentration of HIV diagnosis
as well as mental health. As well as mental health. That pharmacy is essential.
And also with substance abuse issues. So I first and foremost, I want to highlight the importance of this facility. At the same time, express great frustration with the conditions of that facility. It is a complete and total lack of leadership to have allowed for that facility to reach the state in which it is currently in, because, Mr. Chair, I think you said it best, and sad to say that it's almost third worldish. It is. And that's at the gateway of our community, and certainly aesthetically, it's not what should be behind this great new jewel of a park that now we have at the entrance of our city. Having said that, I think that there's work to be done because I do think we need to deliver on a better clinic, and I want to thank you for stepping up to work on that. I have some concerns with the height, and I would love to see us work on mitigating some of the issues with the height, and if we can provide some greater separation from 8th Street, I think that would be good. But ultimately, this goes to the voters, and if we don't deliver to the voters a project that they feel comfortable with, the voters are going to vote against us. And I think we serve everyone best when we send to the voters projects that will succeed, not projects that will fail, because we've seen them fail in the past. What I don't want to do is say, okay, I trust the voters to send them certain projects, but I don't trust the voters on other projects. I want to see this move forward, but I do think I have concerns with the height and the setback from 8th Street that I think we should work on mitigating. Thank you.
Let me ask if we've looked at whether or not on the height issue we can mitigate that by just having a larger footprint, even if it encroaches in the park a little bit. Have we looked at that?
You know, we haven't, and that would be a whole legal issue.
Yeah.
Extending the building into the park, and I don't think that would be the right direction to go. You know, I think that 150 feet is extremely reasonable, and it doesn't affect anyone, especially with Federation Tower there. It certainly is actually shorter than what the hospital building was that we imploded. So I just don't see that direction being the right direction.
Okay.
We were originally 300 feet, took it down to 250 feet. Eric continued to talk to the community and the neighborhood at large, and then it was his recommendation of the 150 feet, and it took quite a bit to get David to agree to the 150 feet. So,
and that is still, though, I guess, a little bit south of where that surface parking lot is, as opposed to being on the surface parking lot, which would be my preference, but I don't own that land.
The surface parking lot?
At 8th and Alton.
Yes,
which is
it is south of that. That's
so
right.
It's where it would be.
Yeah, it would be where the community health center is today. It would be north of where it is today, some 10, 12, 20 feet north, which is all north of the Floridian Tower.
But if we're not able to resolve this issue with the surface parking lot, again, that's could be there for many, many years to come.
It could be, but maybe we put a concerted effort between now and when it gets to the commission next week.
And it's interesting that I believe that property just changed hands, right? So I don't know that under the prior ownership there was any allegation that they had any FAR, and now all of a sudden somebody thinks they have FAR.
The property itself is overbuilt by some correct me, Eric, 9,000 square feet of FAR, and on the total property, because it was built before the downzoning. So, by the way, when this was a hospital use, it had no limitation as it relates to FAR. So it's sort of funny how this whole thing happened. But when it did get downzoned, the Federation Tower was downzoned as well, and Tom determined that it was one development site, and therefore all of the FAR combined was still, the building was still 9,000 square feet more than what the FAR allowed. If they were two separate parcels, because they've never been combined legally, then they would have an independent right to develop the site on that corner. And Federation Tower would no longer be $9,000 over FAR, 9,000 square feet over FAR. It would be something like 29,000 or 39,000 square feet over FAR. So that's their issue. And
Tom, I remember asking this question. I don't know if it was of you or somebody else months and months ago. And it was my understanding that they used the FAR from where that surface parking lot is now as part of the overall development. Is that your understanding?
So the site is a unified development site. We actually did some research on this well over a year ago, and the building was built in 1978. And it was built actually when the FAR on the federated site was 6.0. And they got a variance on density that's specific to low-income housing. The properties do have two separate zoning designations. The parking lot is within a CD2 zone, and the Federated Towers is within an RM2 zone. When it was built, it was two separate zoning districts. I forgot the zoning districts that they were, but it was the predecessor to CD2 and the predecessor to RM2. As Russell stated correctly, when the downzoning was approved in the late 90s, Federated became legal nonconforming. But the issue that we've had with regard to being able to develop the Federated site is that technically it does meet the definition of a unified development site. It was developed together. The parking was always provided on that site, and the original site plan clearly shows that it was one unified site.
And so when it was done, it was documented that it was a unified development site.
Yes.
At the time it was constructed, right?
Yes.
Okay. Except it was not unified by deed.
Right.
So that's their claim. Tom is right. All the plans show it as one unified site,
right,
but they were never combined by deed. There's no recording in the anywhere.
But Tom, is that's not a legal requirement that it be?
It is today, but it wasn't then.
No, under our code, it's you're considered our definition is very broad, and you're considered a unified development site if the lot lines touch and there are improvements that span the entire lot line. And there is clearly site plan approval for all of the lots that are shown, including the parking lot.
I can attest that Tom has been absolutely, if nothing else, consistent in this issue. Not only on this one, but on many others. And one thing you can credit him for is consistency.
So what is the desire to try to get this on the ballot in August? Is that
yes,
the desire?
From a sequencing standpoint, this is pending before the planning board because this was a door referral to both the land use committee and the planning board. We have advertised the ordinance that's before you for the planning board for May 24th, and it's also scheduled to be considered by the commission at first reading the next day on May 25th. And if you did approve the ordinance at first reading on May 25th and you did approve a ballot question, it could go on the August ballot.
Point of order, Mr. Chairman, colleague, if you yield. May 25th is a city commission meeting that has long been advertised as an awards and presentation meeting. For probably over a month now, I've been announcing the fact I will be out of town and I will not be participating at that meeting. I would respectfully request that it not be on that agenda. Again, it's not advertised for business. It's advertised as an awards and presentations meeting. Thank you.
Well, okay, that's fair, and I think this would need a 5/7 vote. Yeah, so we'll need your opinion regardless, especially on a 5/7 type vote. What other dates do we have available?
Well, the challenge is that it has to go to planning board first. So
no sooner than planning board.
Right, and planning board, I think, Tom, is the day before, right? Is May 24th?
Correct, and I think the challenge is the ballot question, because if the ballot question is not approved by May 25th, then you'd be looking at the November ballot.
Right.
Because you could get a ballot question approved at either the June or July meeting in time for the November ballot. But if the ballot question is not approved at the May 25th meeting, it would not be able to go on the August ballot.
Okay.
So-
Do we have we started drafting the ballot language?
We have a draft of it, and I think do you have a draft of it? Graham should be sharing it with you.
I can speak with Graham after today's meeting, but it's a short time frame, but we can draft a ballot question based on the legislation.
Okay, so I want to move the item out of committee today, so it's pending before the planning board now. So I would like to move it out of committee so that we can keep it on track. We're going to have to figure out how we're going to have to reschedule your vacation. I'm sorry. I hope you haven't bought plane tickets.
It's urgent to be on the August calendar.
Yeah, Commissioner Samuel.
Tom, was this item heading finance at any point?
I don't believe that this item has been referred to the Finance Committee, no.
Okay. And Mr. Galbert, you said it was very important that it go on August. Could you explain that rationale? I mean, August, November, a few months away, but sounds important to you. I'd like to understand why.
For 4 years, there wasn't a public works project that was under construction. Now, all of a sudden, we have a new commission, and some things are actually going forward. It seems like everything in Miami Beach gets delayed and delayed and delayed, and that's the killer of everything in life. I guess the easiest way to say it is that August is the time for it to happen, and every day is another day in life. I'm 70 years old. I'm approaching the end of my professional career. I'd like to see this done in my lifetime, and I don't look to postpone things. I look to get them done, and I think that it's imperative that it goes on the August calendar. On the November calendar, it is extremely long, and it will be extremely contentious. And there are multiple campaigns already garnering what will happen in November. And we don't want to be any part of that. This is a very simple issue. You either want a new health center that costs the city nothing, or you don't. And I think it's important to be on the August calendar so it doesn't get awashed with so many other issues that will be on the November calendar. It's a difference between success and failure.
Okay. You made a motion.
So I've made a motion to move it out of committee. Obviously, it still needs some more work. You guys are working on it. I don't know that. Do you need guidance from us today? Is that what you're looking for in terms of what we would like to, what sort of arm twisting we would like to extend upon Mr. Galbert, or how what are you looking for other than? Obviously, to keep it on track, we need to move it out of committee.
What I would suggest is you move it out of committee with the differences that Eric has talked about. It gives the neighbors some time to talk with us as well, and it's going to be back in the 25th. So we're the earliest date.
If I may,
please.
Sure.
Edward Martos' office is at 2800 Ponce de Leon Boulevard. I'm here on behalf of the Floridian. And let me be very clear. We're not looking to delay and kill improvements to the community health center. Period. Full stop. We don't want anything to jeopardize the community health center. We also agree with Mr. Carpenter's goals for the or assessment, rather, that the community health center is important, that its face toward the park is important. And if it's the will of this board to move it out of committee today, that's great. We have no issue with that. We ask is that you move it out of committee with some direction. Now, there's been a lot of talk about how this is a community issue, and it absolutely is. And we are part of that community. 334 units, a major part of West Avenue. And so we need to be heard, and our concerns need to count into whatever recommendations you put out. Our concerns are not with development for the sake of fighting development, okay? Our concerns are not about who's moving in. Our concerns is with density and traffic. That's it. And when, for 20 years, Mr. Galbert was trying to work on this area of town. And initially, he proposed a tower, and he lost that ability to do that for politics, for all sorts of reasons. He proposed instead a project called Waves, with 444 units spread across multiple 6, 7-story towers and a rehabilitated North Shore Hospital. And when the Floridian came to my firm, our answer to them was, what you need is not zero development, you need the right development. And we moved heaven and earth. We lobbied all of you, okay, very strenuously to change the zoning code to allow a tower. Why? Because a tower allows for higher returns on the investment. You sell the units for more, and that makes it possible for a developer to build fewer units. So where he had 444 units, he moved down to about, I've lost my notes, but less than half of that. Okay? Now we're going backwards. We're slipping backwards to a point where we're going back to the density he originally proposed. Now, if an office is proposed for the site, we would have no issue with that. Yes, offices generate traffic, but it's not residential. It's a different pattern of traffic, and it's a use that the people who already live in the neighborhood can utilize. Same with the restaurant. Same with general commercial uses. Our concern really comes down to changing the zoning code to facilitate a residential tower. It also relates to traffic. We could live with more units, Mr. Richardson, Commissioner Richardson, your point is perfectly taken. If it could shift north, what would happen? You'd have 2 frontages on any future tower. And of course, Mr. Galbert doesn't control that, Federation Towers does. But if that could happen, we have a solution there where traffic is suddenly serviced by 2 different frontages. That's huge. That would be a tremendous improvement. So here's my recommendation. My recommendation is that you limit density. My recommendation is that if more density is to be provided, we work as a community with Federation Towers. When the Waves project came up and my client hired my firm to say, don't let the Waves project happen, my solution to the problem was bring the community together, change the zoning code, right? Remember, folks, you control the zoning code. A lot of this is your creation, and we can be creative and modify it. You can do so again, but do it with the community input. So do what we did at Waves. Bring in the Floridian, bring in the neighbors, and bring in Federation Towers. And if there's a change to be had with the zoning code, it should benefit not just Mr. Galbut, but Federation Towers, Mr. Galbut, West Avenue, and the park. Everyone should be involved in this. Okay, so I don't know the exact, changes that need to be made to the proposal, but if you're going to move it, at least move it out of committee with some general guidelines that bring in the community and give us an opportunity to work on something. If the community is not involved now and has say in it, I promise you it's going to fail at the vote. Okay, at the ballot box, it's going to fail. And if you think a 1-month delay is terrible, imagine what a delay that takes us to the next election cycle will be. Okay, thank you.
So let me respond to a couple of things. Yeah. So I hear that you and your client would prefer 100% office, and the proposal now is residential. I feel that probably a better is a mixed use where it's both, because when you have a mixed use, what you have is some people going to work, and those people are away from the community, but then you have workers coming into the community, so it supports, restaurants in the area and so forth, and then at night the workers go home, the people come home from work, and they're in their homes, and so it's activating throughout. So I would like to see a mixed
Commissioner,
use.
We agree. It's just a matter of the amount and the number, right? When we challenged the Waves project and we started pushing for the Park and Tower project, right, that exists today, we weren't opposed to the restaurant and the commercial for that very reason. You need to activate the park. You need a mix. Our point is that we're not sure that the number of units being proposed now and potential units that Federation Tower wants to bring in is the right number, because we already have a community. West Avenue has a lot of people there, right? There's already a mix, and there's not a lot of other stuff.
Yeah. All I know is that stretch from Alton and 8th south, now we have a beautiful park, but those buildings, some of them are vacant. The health center is in terrible condition.
It is.
And changing that whole area is going to improve the entire district, and for everybody, for the restaurants.
Yes.
I live 2 blocks from there, so I see it every day. I see it
Right.
every day.
Right.
I live on the east side of
Right.
Alton, and so every day I leave, I see that surface parking lot. And then I say to myself every day, there's got to be a better use of land than having a surface parking lot on Alton
Right.
Road.
Right.
So it's not good. I don't think that we're going to land with all the details today in terms of everything, but if we're going to try to keep this on track, then we need to move it out of committee and allow you all to do some more work in consultation with us. I'm available to make some phone calls and to meet with you all if we need to do that. But I don't think we're gonna be able to make any final decisions today on all these open points.
If I may, just one last parting point. We are talking about a site in very concrete terms, and we're talking about creating code provisions for this site. We have no site plan, right? I think it would be beneficial to you all and to the planning board if we were actually looking at a proposed site, actual, and doesn't have to be detailed, but an idea of where a building would land, where a tower would rise from that footprint. That would be essential here, and just, that, for example, is something that you might, when you kick it out of committee and you move it forward, you might say, moving forward, we want some schematics, something concrete to work with.
I just want to respond to one point that you made, and I appreciate your comments.
Yeah.
That I would be careful about tying the 500 Alton into all of this, because you see that the 500 Alton deal was done, and the public benefit was a beautiful park and a pedestrian overlay. Right, that was a public benefit, and so I'm not going to react favorably to saying that because we gave you a tower, we can't give you anything else on the land, because that wasn't part of the deal, right? So
that was not part of the deal,
Okay.
and that's not my intention. If that's what you took from my comments, scratch it, because we don't think that at all. We love the tower, we love the park.
Yeah. So I think the only thing that we're looking at here is, by right, the developer has a certain amount of feet that they can put inside the park.
Yes.
And so now there's an opportunity maybe to give that all up, or part of that up, in exchange maybe for something else.
I think that would be a mistake.
Okay. I want to bring this in for landing. We're not going to
Understood.
keep debating it. So
Understood.
Your time is up.
Got it.
I want to hear from the rest of the
Thank you.
public, and just let's try to minimize. We still have
Commissioners,
a very
thank you.
Your time is up. We have a busy agenda. We still have a lot of important business to do. I do want to continue hearing from the public. Commissioner Samuelin had a comment.
Yeah, if I could. First off, I don't want to slow this down either, and so it is very encouraging to hear stakeholders say, at least one group of stakeholders, they want to move forward. I did hear 3 things that I think should be part of where we go. One is renderings, and I said that last time. We need to see what it looks like. I mean, that's not a hard ask. We absolutely need it. Number 2 is the right mix of office and residential and other commercial. We've talked about the importance of office, and that is something we really want. In fact, we're talking about joint venturing on public land for office. If we really want office, here's a good opportunity. And finally, community engagement. We need community engagement at this level to have a fighting chance at the ballot. So when we get to a motion, I would be supportive of getting it out of committee, and those would be the key points for me.
Mr. Magazine, before you go, let me just make a couple comments, then I'll turn it over to you. So, but before us, this is I think a lot of us, including, even people who have some opposition, I think everyone wants to see a much better community health center. We are up against a clock, and whether it's August or November, that's a decision we'll have to make. But if we don't make it, then potentially we're going to wait yet another year, and I'm not okay with that, because the people who matter the most are the people who are serviced by the community health center. So, moving it out of committee today doesn't mean we're not going to spend a lot of time hearing from residents and concerns that they have, but timing really is important here, because if we don't put it either August or November, if this project still continues to have life, then it's yet another year that folks who are serviced by the community health center will have to wait. So that's why timing is important. And let me just say, and you know, I know both of you and respect both of you, and I know you have some concerns here. The folks that use this center are not here today, right? And so this is the silent majority, minority, whatever you want to say. But the people who we're doing this for aren't here today in chambers to voice their concerns and opinions. And I think we can all imagine what they would say. So very often we get, you know, a vocal minority, a very important group coming into chambers to tell us about their concerns and objections. But the folks that we are really ultimately trying to service aren't here today. And so my primary reason for supporting this is to get a first-class community health center built for our most vulnerable population, the type of center that we would personally want to get medical attention from, that we want our parents, grandparents to go to, and today we don't have that. So I'm going to keep pushing us to get that project done. Now, that said, now before I turn it over to you, I'm going to ask you, please tell us what your concerns are, but please put on your best negotiating hat to help us make this happen, because I'm going to push to get this done. So please be reasonable. We're going to work really hard to address your concerns, because personally, I really want to get this done. I have some opinions on where I would land on what the best use of this property would be. So, you know, I want to hear from you. I didn't hear from Mr. Galbert any concerns he would have making a mixed-use project, office, residential. I would lean in that direction. I haven't really spoken about it. I don't know that just making more park space would be the best idea. I was there last week. It's an amazing park. It's really large. I don't know that we need an extra half acre. I think if we can activate the park through commercial use, that would probably be better. But
thank you, Commissioner. Actually, Joseph Magazine, I echo your sentiments entirely. To be clear, I'm not here as an obstructionist. I want to see something done. I want to be pragmatic and be a partner here. But I've done a lot of deals in my life, and I know what's worse than doing no deal is doing a bad deal, because you have to live with that forever. I'm sympathetic. I don't want delays either. But we're talking a tight timeline here. That Thursday commission meeting is the day before Memorial Day weekend. This planning board, if you hear the traffic patterns, this isn't a cut and dry issue. There's a lot of things that go into this. Talking about delays, you know how I originally got involved in the city and became a concerned resident? Because I lived across from a mud pit for years and years that became the Zika ground zero when my daughter was in her mother's stomach. So please, a month delay, I don't have much sympathy for that. So I'd like to ask a few questions and bring things to your attention that I don't think have been discussed here. Just want to ask you all, is your vision for the entrance of Miami Beach a 15-story, 150-foot tower at the gateway of Alton Road? We talk about Federation Tower. We just heard that it is over limits. It's grandfathered in. And this wouldn't only be one Federation Tower. Because of the length, it'll be 2, possibly 3 Federation Towers stacked next to each other. I want to ask some questions about the county's involvement here. Are you aware that when the county bought this site in 2005, the sales contract and corresponding lease agreement to Miami Beach Community Health Center, whom we'll refer to as the tenant, the contract specified the tenant would be responsible for any maintenance and needs in keeping the exterior of the building and roof in proper condition. And they didn't. And that contract said if they didn't, the county would have to step in and do so. Why hasn't that been done? Okay? The not-for-profit health center has been listing since 2015 in their audited financial statements about the condition of the building. We say that the city's not flushing cash. I'm sympathetic to that. You know who is flushing cash? Miami Beach Community Health Center. Their audited financial statements from 2021 show an unencumbered net asset position of $28 million, $21 million in cash. Why are they not contributing here? Okay? The valuations are a joke. They truly are. Just one block up the road on Alton Road, our former mayor, Phil Levine, just listed his property that's a similar size. It's not looking at this beautiful, beautiful park Mr. Galbert built. It's looking at Whole Foods parking lot. You know what that's on sale for? $25 million. $25 million. This gets a valuation of 10. Mr. Galbert has a surface parking lot next to a hostel at Macchiolina that's on the market now for $11 million. That's half the size of this community health center lot. So that's just about valuations. But I want to be pragmatic. I want to be a partner. A public-private partnership, by definition, is all of us working together. In my worst Jerry Maguire voice, help me help you. I want to engage in this. I want to be able to go out and look my neighbors in the eye and say, this is the best. We want this deal. We want to help the people most vulnerable in our community with a new health center. And I need to go out and look at my neighbors and say, this is a project you should support. Is a 15-story wall along Alton Road that? I don't think so. That's not my vision. I don't think it's anybody else's here vision. Get the best project that we can. Let's work. It's not about rushing this on the ballot or things like that. I'm being genuine. I will dedicate my blood, sweat, and tears, my time, effort, and passion to go out and help the developer, help the city commission, sell it to the community. Maybe that doesn't mean that every single dollar could be squeezed out of this.
Okay.
In this market, bulls make money, bears make money, but pigs go to slaughter. Help me get the best project, because I'll help get it passed. But this project will not do that. Thank you all for your time and consideration.
Thank you. Thank you for being here. Good morning.
Hi, good morning. Dana Walpert Martorella, 650 West Avenue. I'll keep this very brief. Commissioner Ariella, the members that go to the Community Health Center don't need to be here today. I am here to advocate for them. I agree with you. I want to push this project forward. I think a new Community Health Center is imperative to the community. We agree on that completely. My preference would be to refurbish the Community Health Center that's there now in its current location and create additional park space. We even had a meeting with Mayor Galber, and he was joking that we could create additional park space over the current Community Health Center and even perhaps, if necessary, over the Floridian parking lot, and we could put pickleball courts on the roof there and all sorts of things. That said, I completely understand the desirable situation that we're in and that Mr. Galbert has agreed to do this, and I recognize having this community-private partnership to do that, and I think we need to do whatever we have to do to push this community health center forward. But Commissioner Richardson, I respectfully, this is a community that the 500, 700 can't be extricated from this. I was involved in that project for close to 16 years. And for 16 years, I advocated for this park and tower because it was imperative to preserve the residential character of West Avenue. You have West Avenue that's lined with all of these condominiums. You have this incredibly residential feel. Alton feels more commercial, and then it goes back to residential, and it was very important to preserve that residential character. This feels like the current project that's listed now feels like a betrayal. It feels like we fought all those years to maintain that residential character, and now if you look at an aerial view and you look at the size of the community health center and that you're looking to put a mixed-use piece there and to encroach upon the park to make the park look like a small front yard when it's this expansive, beautiful piece of land, it feels like a betrayal. So in closing, I would respectfully ask you to scale this project down as much as possible. With the current plan to move forward to refurbish the community health center for all of us. So, thank you.
Can I just ask, where do you live in the area?
I live at the Floridian, yes.
Oh, okay. And is your unit facing east?
It does face east.
Yeah. So
I would not be impeded. I live on the top floor. I would not be impeded. My views would not be impeded. That's not even what I'm arguing.
It's one of the concerns that I've gotten emails and people's argument, some people, their sole argument against the project is that their views will be affected.
No, I am not standing here before you to argue that views would be affected. I'm standing here to argue with you that it's a residential neighborhood. Already, whenever we have an event, whenever there's, Basel or the boat show or anything that's not even in Miami Beach, the traffic that comes down West Avenue, you can't walk down West Avenue. I mean, forget drive down it, because people want to use that thoroughfare to get on the MacArthur. So, I mean, we have incredible issues with density and traffic in that area. And I know that Alton Road is already maxed out with turning lanes and turning, traffic lights. And I don't, the one thing, part of the way that I received community advocacy for this project was I said there will be no ingress or egress on West Avenue, and that's something that Mr. Galpin and I agreed to when we were talking about the 5700 lot. So I can't extricate the two projects from one another.
Mr. Chair. I don't think we need to extricate them. I just want the record to be clear that Dana and I did have 2 appointments to meet, both of which were canceled.
I had COVID for one of them.
No, I know.
And my board members weren't able to meet
hopefully
the
you can
other.
meet after this.
So hopefully we can meet after this. I don't think Dana has quite realized the reductions that we've gone from and where we came to. I know that Eric has been in direct communications with Dana, and I know that his demands were in response to hers requests. We've gone out.
These were not. They were not. There were other community voices that were there, and I never asked for any setback or anything.
Can we just ask them if the two of you will make a commitment today to have a meeting?
Absolutely.
Are you both committed to doing
bring
that?
Mr. Magazine in as well. We have no objections. We want to do this as a family and see if we can get it accomplished. And like I said, it's important that we get everybody's objective. We have shared with the members of the public. Dana did say she was going to come to the WAVNA meeting. At the WAVNA meeting, we did.
Let's not do that.
Right, we did do.
Hopefully, you guys will get together.
Yes, we'll get together between now and our next meeting.
So, do we have any members from the public?
Yes,
Okay.
we have 2. The first is Wayne Roberts.
Okay,
Thank
Wayne.
you very much.
Wayne, you're on.
Thank you very much, Ricky. Gentlemen, ladies, where do I begin? The traffic on, and I appreciate the concern for the community. In fact, I'm here dropping a lady off for cancer follow-up. She had breast cancer and getting her tubes taken out. She posted on Facebook that she didn't have a ride, and I made myself available for that. And I appreciate that we're concerned about the community, and that's what we should be worried about. And Russ is a good guy, and I'm sure he cares about like the community center. But Mr. Magazine is correct. There's $25 million, sitting in their bank account that could be utilized to update that facility. In fact, somebody posted that the CEO was arrested for embezzlement for something. I don't know what. But the issue really is what's in the best interest of the community. People talk about blocking views. Well, it's not just blocking views. Those homes will devalue, because their view is no longer there. And do we care about residents and developers and residents that aren't even here? Or do we care about the residents that are? And hundreds of people could be impacted financially by that development. And that has to be part of the consideration. I thought David Richardson's remarks were ridiculous in that respect. As for 300,000 feet, I think is the size of that complex. It's insane relative to what exists today. And to add more density is going to create traffic and misery for residents. And you guys got to out with the promotion, the lobbying and the promotion on behalf of developers to create an environment that makes them money, but lives in Miami Beach worse.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Wayne. Do we have anybody else?
Yes, Amy Litos.
Okay. Hi. Good morning, Amy. Amy, you're on.
Yes, good morning. Thank you. I will be brief because much has already been said and said very articulately by Joseph Magazine and my board president, Dana Martorella. I think the takeaway here is that I have seen 4 PowerPoint presentations on this project, and everyone has been different. If you were to count today is yet another iteration of what will be placed in that parcel of land. We do not have any specifics. What does the design look like? What will the complex be reflective of? Is it retail? Is it condos? Is it rental apartments? We have another point that hasn't been brought up either, and that is in this draft ordinance that was posted last night, apparently there will be no parking that will be available for the community health center. That brings up yet another issue that hasn't been touched on. Where will all those employees and visitors to the community health center park? So the takeaway is we do not know what this project is really about ultimately. And I think until we do, a vote is basically worthless. And I believe pushing this forward would not be in the community's best interests. Thank you.
Okay. Colleagues, anything else?
So, Mr. Magazine, I have not seen those financial statements. If you don't mind, I would appreciate if you would get them to me. I'd love to take a look at those.
I know you are the budget guy, and I know you have an accounting background, so I'm happy to.
Yeah, if you'll send those, that would be very helpful. Thank you so much.
Mr. Samuelin?
And Mr. Chair, just one quick item, because it sounds like we have alignment on mixed use. What the exact mix is needs to be determined. Sounds like we have alignment, the community coming together, always the right path. Mr. Galbert, just one question, and I know there are a lot of moving parts. Last time I did ask about renderings.
You're going to have them all. Amy was right, actually, in what she said.
Okay.
There's been at least, not 4, but at least 8 renditions of these plans. The one thing that has been consistent from the first to the end, it's consistently shrunk, 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 and then shrunk again. So that's why we don't have plans today. But we do have a plan, and I can put it up right now, that shows you the minimalistic, more recent plan. But I'd rather not waste the time of this commission, and we will do it next time for sure, and we certainly have a full package for the planning board. And they have constantly undergone shrinkage, and now we are mixed use as well. Okay. So we've listened to you entirely, and we're following the instructions, and hopefully we're going to work a little closer with Joe and with Dana and see what we can do from here.
Thank you for that.
Mr. Chair?
Okay, yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Bring this in for landing, so.
Yeah. So when this makes its way to the commission, which it seems is moving out of committee, there's just some information that I would like to receive. You know, when we're talking about FAR and density, to me, what it ultimately translates to in the direct impact to the residents and to the overall community, I think it's traffic. And that's my main concern in this location. And some information that I would just kindly request from the administration that we receive when this comes before us is, you know, the existing level of service of the streets around there, the amount of trips that are going to be generated, and the overall then level of service at the end. Once we take into consideration not just this specific project, but the overall projects planned for the area. I think it's important for us to know what will be the final overall total of number of cars, you know, peak hour, AM and PM, peak hour generation of vehicles, and the overall level of service by the time that this is all completed under what's being proposed.
Okay, guys, all right, there's the last.
Yeah. So one of the things you mentioned, Chair, and I would be interested in looking at is initially this thing started with an exchange of giving up that commercial space on the southeast corner of the park to get some more park space for this. So one of the things that I'd like to see is as a way of addressing the density issue is if we were to allow that shorter project to stay there in exchange for a little bit less density. I have no idea if that would work. I have no idea if the numbers work. But
no one has ever discussed that little 11,000 square feet from going away. The issue, what was discussion was taking the parking that's between that building and the park and making that parkland instead of parking. That was that issue. We haven't brought those two together at all yet.
Okay. Well, we need to address that issue as part of the work that you're going to continue doing. So I think with that.
Yeah, so, all right, so you made a motion to,
get this out of committee, and I'll second it. You okay with that? Just to keep things on track. Just an observation, right, of what's happening here. If you kind of, really pay attention. Earlier this morning we talked about, wanting to build more housing, workforce housing, et cetera. Potentially we have an opportunity here. But then you get neighbors, and I'm not targeting anybody with this comment, but this is just the way these things happen is, no, not in my neighborhood. It might affect my property values, my views, so kill the project or intensify it. And so, we're elected officials, we listen, and then we kind of kill it. But so everyone wants workforce housing, everybody wants more, housing, but they don't want it in their neighborhood. And unless you're willing to, upset some people, it'll never get done. So you have a potential here, however many units. Mr. Gallo was talking about building fewer, larger units to satisfy the boogeyman that everyone uses, traffic. And so we'll have less housing being developed. And so, we talk on one side of our mouth, we want more workforce housing, but then when push comes to shove, we don't get it done. And then you had a comment by a member of the public saying, well, this will affect their views, it'll decrease their property values. So, as a homeowner, property owner, you have this incentive to limit supply because it increases your property value because, just the law of supply and demand, the less supply and the higher demand, which we are fortunate to have here in Miami Beach, your prices are going to go up. So there's no mystery why prices keep going up in Miami Beach. We just don't have much supply. It's interesting, if you study what Japan did in the 80s, for those of us old enough to remember, they had a major housing crisis. It was, beyond comprehension how expensive pricing got in Japan, house prices got in Japan during their bubble. The land under the Imperial Palace there was considered to be more valuable than all of the property in California put together. So they knew they had a housing crisis. What they basically did, they nationalized zoning codes. They basically said, we're not going to leave little municipalities to decide these things anymore. We're just going to have a national zoning code, and you can build as of right. And so that's what had to happen to address their housing crisis. And then now prices in Japan actually are lower than they were in the 80s, and families can afford to build and live in housing in Japan and in Tokyo. And, I think nationally, we may have to get to that point where the state just preempts home rule and just says, projects like this, we will have endless amounts of meetings. We'll end up having fewer units to live in because we have local elections and local people vote and they opine on these things. But this is a perfect illustration of what we were talking about earlier this morning, where we all want more workforce housing. Okay, pick a neighborhood and say it's going to go there, and we're going to have the exact same conversation with those neighbors, and nothing will get done.
Exactly.
Just a point of information, because Nick, Mr. Attorney, in the resolution before us, is there a maximum on the AMI for this? Are we talking like a 60 to 140% AMI housing requirement to live in these properties, or
the legislation doesn't address that. No.
Okay.
And just
wasn't sure.
Yeah, just to be clear, we're moving the item out of committee, recognizing that the parties are still working on it. So
precisely correct.
We're not saying that this is going to be the final version. We're saying we're moving it out. This is a good first step. We know you're still working on it. And that was the motion that I think the three of us have.
Yeah, I think you heard an hour's worth of comments back and forth to help guide your negotiations. And, Mr. Galvin, please speak with the neighbors and see if consensus can be reached.
We will definitely do that.
All right. Let's move on. Thank you, everybody, for participating. Thank you. Okay. In no particular order, I'm willing to take items up unless folks are here that are time pressed. I think we had a 10:30 request, and it's already 11:30. The 10:30 was discuss the raising of private homes. Commissioner Samuel, and this is yours.
Yeah.
Amy, were you the one who needed the 10:30? Okay, let's do this.
Yeah, let me tee it up, Mr. Chair, because I think we can move expeditiously Amy's been very busy, especially doing a fine job representing the city at the Aspen Institute. Basically, this is how do we help private property homeowners. We have a private property adaptation program. We have funding to use some outside consulting. This came up. One of my colleagues, I believe is Commissioner Richardson, asked some smart questions. Amy said she'd come back with some smart answers and some headline answers, and we can move forward.
Sure. Thank you so much, Commissioner. Good morning, everyone. Amy Knowles, Chief Resilience Officer. So just to keep things brief, overall, we do have vulnerable homes and private properties in our city. We're almost completely in the FEMA floodplain. We have at least 74 properties that have experienced severe or repetitive loss sites, which can make them very susceptible to receive grant funding from the federal government. So we do know that these properties can receive up to 75 to 100% fully paid for by the federal government, but we do need to facilitate that application process as a city, and that's where we come in. Overall, there were a couple of questions last time. One about how does this sort of expose the city in terms of financial liability, so we've gotten some initial answers to that. Overall, this would not expose the city. We would need to have some funding in our budget around the year of fiscal year 2024 so that we could be a pass-through for the federal government and for our homeowners. But essentially, the contractor invoices the homeowner if they enter the program. The homeowner pays the invoice, all sorts of submits proof of invoice, proof of payment, all of these. The city does have an auditing component. We reimburse the homeowner at the federal cost share. And it's a process where we would be audited, of course, but it's not something that we would be out for as a city. So this program has been around for a while, and we can use our own private property adaptation funding to go ahead and facilitate that with the contractor. I think the other question that we had was, could the property be redeveloped after it is elevated? And so the answer to that is we could include a deed restriction as part of the grant agreement to make sure that if a property is elevated, that it has a deed restriction for demolition. So those were the two remaining items, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Can I ask? So can we go back to the fiscal? You said we would need money in fiscal year 24. How much money do you have an estimate of what we would need?
Sure. So it would depend on the amount of projects who are accepted into the program. We would find that out next summer. So a little bit on the time frame, I should back up a little bit. The applications are due to the Florida Department of Emergency Management in November of 2022. So this is a program we're going to get going this summer. It does take some time to get this going. Notification of award next summer, project implementation after that, a couple years after that. So if there were 10 eligible projects, if we're assuming an average cost of $350,000, we would want to have about $1 to $1.5 million at the ready to facilitate cash flow. But we can adjust that as that gets closer.
But you said 24, so because we're getting ready to go into our budget cycle for this year, so we're not going to need anything in the coming year.
Not at all. At this time, it's included within our private property adaptation budget that comes from the Resilience Fund, and we think it's money well spent to help facilitate this process of the applications.
And in 24, the money, because it sounds like maybe between $1 and $2 million we might want to allocate. Is that going to be what the city would spend, or is that just to facilitate cash flow? That's just because I think there's some reimbursement that comes back, right?
Yes. So the federal government would reimburse 75 to 100% of the funding. And as part of our private property program, we do think we can also dedicate some funding. So we've committed to up to $20,000 per property. So that could help. And then the remaining would be paid for by the property owner, which is consistent with what other cities do. It's
all right. So we're not going to need to do anything in the coming fiscal year that we're about to go through our budget cycle, right?
No, we're not. Thank you.
Okay, great. That answers my question. Thank you.
Is there any public comment? Okay, thank you. Thank you. Yes, Daniel Serraldo with Miami Design Preservation League. I wanted to thank the city for taking this on because we are at the cutting edge of these issues with climate change, and it sounds like an interesting program is being developed. The only thing I wanted to mention is that even though you might not want to budget for it this year, I think that there is still the Resiliency Fund and the Private Property Adaptation Fund that some of these ideas, like we're talking about the demolition fee, might be able to go into that as a potential source of funds for the program in the future. So it's an exciting process now, and it's good that the city's on top of this. Thank you.
Mr. Chair, if I could close it out. Daniel, that's right on. We're going to talk about that item hopefully shortly. And that private property adaptation fund, I think, is a source of funds. Sounds like my colleague was satisfied with the answers. Amy, I believe you do not need action today. So, Tom, we would close the item out today.
Okay.
Great. Thank you so much.
Good. Okay. Had a request for item 16. Commissioner Samuel, and this is yours, and then we'll do item 8. I also had a...
Mr. Chair, I am the sponsor. Maybe by memory, I thought you might have been a co-sponsor. If I got that wrong.
I'm happy to do it.
Okay. I don't want me to put you on the spot. I thought I saw your name on there. Okay, let's talk about item number 16. This is a community-driven project to expand our office capability. This is a project, an area north of Dade Boulevard. The Sunset Harbor supports this project. And we are here to get a quick overview.
Yes, sir.
And I'll bounce it over to Michael.
Yes, sir. Good morning, Mr. Chairman, board members, staff. Michael Larkin, 200 South Biscayne Boulevard. PJ, could you pull up the presentation, please? I promised everyone a 5-minute presentation, and I'm going to do it. You have no idea how quickly I can speak. All right, next slide, please. Okay, so I think you all know the location. This will be an amendment to the Sunset Harbor Neighborhood Overlay Regulations. They'll start at 18th Street, track north. It's not going to go all the way to 20th Street because another part of the regulations requires a reduction in height up there, so that's why it's not going to go all the way there. But the property in red is the gas station that will be converted to our proposed Class A office building. Next slide. This is just some photographs, the context photographs of the area. Next slide.
But not the veterinary hospital?
No, that stays. That stays. I know that's near and dear to several people's hearts. This is a picture of the proposed building. Next slide. Another vantage point. Next slide. Another vantage point. Next slide. So this is the scope of the code amendment area. The southern boundary is 18th Street, where Michael's Arts and Crafts was. It's been bought by a family, but there's now some discussion that Michael's might use a lease agreement to pull in Ross or just, so we'll hope not, but hopefully we will sort that out for them. But it covers more than just our property. Obviously, it covers with Michael's Arts and Crafts space. Our property, the veterinarian clinic, will remain in place. They can redevelop when they want, and the Goodyear store. So it covers multiple properties. It'll be an increase from 50 to 75 feet in height to attract Class A office use. You all have done a great job of that throughout the city. Barry Sternlicht's proposal is amazing, the way it's been leased out. Your inducement program at Alton Road is attracting a lot of interest. What you all did at Michigan and Fifth Street is also attracting interest, and we're almost done with our approvals there. Terminal Isle, Purdy Avenue. So you all put the building blocks in place, and the Class A office users are now coming to meet an unmet demand. Next slide, please. So this is, we're 3 changes. Right now, the pedestrian path is it has to be 10 feet wide. The DRB can reduce the width to 5 feet. The neighborhood thought this is so important that they wanted to take away from the DRB the power to make it less wide. So we're okay with that. So it'll be at 10 feet. Next slide, please. Next slide. That's what it looks like in the body of the legislation. It's just saying that in this particular area, the sidewalk has to remain at 10 feet in width. Next slide, please. So here's the building height. This is the general rule. So next slide, we're adding to that modification. In this particular area that you all saw highlighted in yellow, it will go from 50 to 75 feet along the edge of Alton Road, which is the edge of the Sunset Harbor neighborhood. And that's why the neighborhood supports this. Next slide. This is what it looks like in the body of the ordinance. Next slide. This is the last change. Rooftop elements at the moment cannot exceed 10 feet in height. We have a very interesting frame on the top of our building. It goes to 16 feet in height. The neighborhood graciously accepted this change, so we're going to be going to DRB asking for that rooftop element that'll be 16 feet in height from the roof slab rather than 10 feet in height. Next slide. That's the modification language I just described. Next slide. This is how it looks like in the body of the ordinance. Next slide. This is the letter of support from the Sunset Harbor Neighborhood Association. We're very happy to have their support. We've also proffered a covenant that says we have a residential unit on the very top floor. Our covenant says it will not be short-term rental. And we can proffer it in favor of the city or in favor of the neighborhood association. It's up to you all. We don't care. I think it'd be better to be proffered in favor of the city, but that's up to you all as a policy decision. Next slide. And that's it. Thank you for your time. I'm happy to answer any questions you all might have.
So I'll just say that when the overlay was done 6 or 8 months ago, this was my idea.
Oh.
And Sarah de la Freze opposed it. Commissioner Samuel, and you opposed it. And so I'm just wondering what your change of heart is now. I'm glad you've accepted my idea that I had 6 months ago. What's changed?
That's great. Thank you for that, Commissioner Richardson. It's a fair question. I always believe that taking a step-by-step approach earns community trust. At the time that overlay came up, we had some vehement disagreement. And in fact, there was a project lingering on Purdy Avenue that I think was going to potentially fall by the wayside because we were overreaching. What happened is, and I'm so happy you asked me to describe this history, is we brought the developer, we brought the community together, and we got that done. And we got that done in a way that built trust and confidence. Once we built that trust and confidence, and people said, you know, we can do this, there was openness to take that next step forward. It's still not the Fulbright. Correct me if I'm wrong, Mr. Richardson. This isn't everything that you initially proffered. This is another slice. So we might have to have a philosophical debate about the tortoise and the hare. And, you know, in this case, I think the tortoise is doing pretty good.
I think that it pretty much is. It was a height thing. I think it's a terrific idea, and I want to support your initiative.
So listen, I have no opposition to zingers every once in a while. It's all, you know, part of it. It's fun, and if it's done respectfully, it's quite fun. But you know, what I will say to both of you, changing your mind is a sign of maturity, and we don't have enough of that in politics today. You know, we have to be humble, have a sense of humility. I think over the past 2 years especially, part of what's dividing this nation is people won't admit to being wrong. And that's at the federal level and at the local level. And we're not going to get better as a society until we say, hey, we missed some things, okay? And the other side, as much as we might not like them, sometimes they were right, okay? And sometimes we were wrong. So I want more of that, okay? Because I think we're going to be better off as a city. I support this, and you know, I've probably been the strongest for pushing for office use, and I'm going to keep my foot on the gas on the Lincoln Lane, but then I'm probably going to take a pause and let the market settle a little bit. I do think, you know, we need a major project like a Lincoln Lane project, because in order to attract, you know, a big headquarters or something, you need larger projects. These are small family offices. It'll be an engineering firm, law firm, you know, small family office, architect, whatever. But we do need a larger project. That's why I'm still bullish on the Lincoln Lane project. But I want to see after that how we digest all of this. I think we're heading into a recession, so it'll be interesting to see how that plays out. You know, sadly, I live in this neighborhood. I hate losing that gas station because that's literally where I fill up. It's crazy expensive. But I do think over the long term, next 10, 20 years, you know, electronic vehicles will become more and more of a mainstay. We'll need less gas stations. But I do worry about converting a lot of properties that are really convenient for all our residents, gas stations, the tire station, the veterinary clinic that's there,
and a lot of other industrial uses where we don't have zoning pretty much anywhere left in the city for that kind of stuff. And so as we build more apartments, offices, hotels, all of those amenities that we enjoy but wouldn't necessarily want in our neighborhood if we had to do them today, we might become a city where, it's a lot of nice places to live, but anything creature comfort that you need on a daily basis is gone, and we've got to go across the bay. So I urge us to be cautious as we convert these industrial uses to other uses because, we may regret it. Because to build a gas station in the city is never going to happen. So I think we got to go slow with some of these adaptive reuse. But I do support this because I do think there's a lot of things going on. We need more office space. This is going to be a very nice project for the community. We will need less, not more gas stations in the future, but I urge us to go slow with doing this again.
Yes, sir.
Did you make a motion?
I did.
Okay, I'll second it.
And Mr. Chairman,
Somebody
we have two speakers on Zoom. The first is Sarah De Los Reyes.
Okay. Good morning, Sarah.
Good morning, everybody. This is Sarah De Los Reyes, Sunset Harbor Neighborhood Association. We're very happy to have worked very closely with the developer and the lawyer in order to get this done. I have one question that I also want to make sure. I thought that this ordinance was being put under our Sunset Harbor overlay ordinance that we currently have. I just want that clarified. But we worked very hard for the rooftop, and actually you can build the 65 and 25-foot building there like it's being done right now from Wayne Boach. And what we decided to do and they agreed, the developer agreed, that the rooftop structure will be 16 feet. So it would only be about 1 foot higher than what you can build today, plus that area. This development you're not going to have residential areas, a very busy area, very busy street. So we felt that putting, starting offices there would be really great. Hey, by the way, I'll give you an idea. Take the Alton Road Animal Hospital, leave it there, put a garage on top that is all going to be charged for electric chargers for cars, so they can go in there and charge their car. There you go. You have a gas station, electric gas station on the sky.
Okay. Next.
Thank you.
And I can confirm just real quickly that we will be modifying the title because this ordinance is a modification to the Sunset Harbor overlay.
Thank you.
Our next speaker is Bruce Backman.
Good morning, Bruce.
Good morning, guys. How are you doing? Actually, I like this project. I'm not on the board, as you know. I'm just an individual Sunset Harbor resident. And I'm sure part of the reason why it got through the neighborhood association is because of the specific design, the way it's wonderfully stepped back in the back. The view from our towers is important. I'm not talking about over to the ocean. I'm actually looking at the back of the buildings. The back of the Michaels building was a terrible design. It was emphasized to Alton Road, that beside where no one lives, but the view from the neighborhood was actually, this blank wall. So I do have one quick question, though, particularly for you, Ricky, because we have a Formula Retail thing. Is it true that could a Ross store go there? Maybe the Formula Retail doesn't apply to Alton Road? I don't remember. Or maybe Tom can address that.
The Formula Retail, if you'll recall, there were 2 rings created as part of the Formula Retail legislation that's specific to Sunset Harbor, and we did this to make sure that the ordinance would withstand any judicial scrutiny. The inner ring, which is the area that's within the smaller scale area of Sunset Harbor, does have regulations pertaining to Formula Retail. However, the outer ring, which would be those properties fronting Alton Road and Dade Boulevard, does not have the same restrictions on Formula Retail.
Yeah, okay. Okay, it's been moved, seconded. Okay, passes 3-0.
Great. Thank you very much for your time.
Mr. Chair. Yeah, please. 26. Can we do number 8? I don't know which is going to be quicker. Is Commissioner Minor still on?
I'm here.
You got to leave? Okay.
Yes, he's still
Commissioner
on.
Minor. No, let's do number 8, then we'll do number 26. Commissioner Minor, this is your item, and we have Mr. Gonzalez here, I think, to tee this one up. This is a discussion regarding whether to prohibit apartment hotels in additional districts throughout the city of Miami Beach.
Yes, I'll just tee it up quickly. This I brought this item because we had obviously the issues and I guess some controversial issues with some of the apartment hotels in the south of 5th districts, and we ultimately amended the ordinance to not allow going forward in the RS1, RS2 districts apartment hotels. So I thought it would be a good time to take a look citywide if similar type of legislation would make sense. So happy to turn it over to Tom.
Okay, and Mr. Chair, I'll be very brief. This proposal would create a new definition or a revised definition for apartment hotel. And as the committee may recall, we did discuss this at the March 4th meeting, and direction was given to the administration to further fine-tune the proposed definition, and we've made the following changes. Number one, we've added a requirement for a minimum size for the required lobby to be at least 250 square feet. So that way, someone who's doing an apartment hotel can't utilize a broom closet as a lobby. We've also modified the requirement for a direct connection from the lobby to all units. What we've suggested is that a direct connection from the lobby to all units would be limited to buildings constructed after 1965. So that's basically most of your newer apartment hotels like Canyon Ranch, the W, those would have inner lobbies whereby all units would be accessed from that inner lobby. However, most of the older buildings built before 1965, a lot of them have exterior access points and exterior catwalks, and we didn't want to make existing buildings legal nonconforming, and we also wanted to allow for the conversion of existing buildings where hotel uses are permitted. So that was our suggestion with regard to access from lobbies. Lastly, regarding the minimum number of apartment units required, currently the definition of apartment hotel requires that only one of the units be a residential apartment. We had initially suggested that up to 50% be apartments. We've reduced that to 20% in this definition. However, after discussions with people who run apartment hotels, we can see where this could potentially create a problem. I think that because apartment hotels are only permitted in those districts where hotels are permitted and somebody can have a 100% unit hotel, I think leaving it at one apartment unit probably makes the most sense. And that would allow for continued flexibility because there are apartment hotel uses, particularly in larger apartment hotels, where that number will actually fluctuate during the course of the year or during a certain period of time. So if it's the suggestion of the committee to leave it at one apartment unit, we would be okay with that.
Okay.
For the record, Alfredo Gonzalez on behalf of the W South Beach and the Satai Condominium Association. And we support the amendment to bring it down to one because these two buildings in question have operated for almost 20 years as apartment hotels. And the units were originally designed to be able to be an apartment unit or a hotel suite at the choice of the unit owner. And they do switch as the ownership changes or even the existing unit owner changes their plan. They could put it into the hotel program. And right now, for example, the W Hotel has about less than 40 units that are apartment units, which would be under the 20%. And for the record, all the ones that are short-term rented or hotel rent, they do pay the resort tax. So there's no issue, and we meet all the other conditions that are outlined. So it was only if we change it to one unit, it wouldn't impede on these two buildings and other buildings on the beach. Thank you.
Commissioner Minor, can I ask you, and I don't know how you feel about this, colleagues, would you mind if we left this here in committee to chew on this a little more? Because I just think it warrants a longer discussion. We've got a lot that I want to get through today. I know why we would all support this to avoid the situation we find ourselves in the South of 5th neighborhood where you have, an apartment that's being converted to a hotel. That I think we all want to avoid. But what I also want to avoid are the law of unintended consequences, like Mr. Gonzalez just pointed out, where you've got a number of true hotels that are operating in our city that also double as apartments. In my mind, what we want to avoid are
what we had south of Fifth. Somebody buys an apartment and then kind of converts it into a quote-unquote a hotel. When people move into a neighborhood, if they move into a neighborhood where there's an existing hotel, okay, you know that's happening. But if somebody all of a sudden flips the building next to you into a hotel and has a transient use that changes the character of the neighborhood, and current zoning laws would allow them to do that unless we prohibit it, and we should seek to prohibit that kind of activity. But I also don't want to unduly affect things that are true hotels, but they may be sold off as apartments that are then thrown into a rental pool. Like, to me, a hotel is a hotel. You have a lobby, you have security, you have amenities, etc., versus, this fiction of a hotel, which is nothing more than a short-term rental. Personally, I just like a little more time to work this out.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, if you would like some additional time, I'm always of that mind to do so. These are complex entities because in some case they are hotel rooms, but in some case people live there and the terms get interchanged. Apartment hotel, condo hotel. So it's a little bit technical. I would support your request for additional time.
Yeah, Commissioner Minor, are you okay with that?
Yeah, no, completely. And I think it actually is wise. As you see, we're sort of making amendments on the fly. So I agree, and the purpose is not to have the unintended consequences. So I think some more time to thoroughly analyze this would be helpful.
Tom, I'm going to ask you if you can guide us. I mean, you heard my comments. I don't know what comments my colleagues may have, but personally, I just want to do this right. Obviously, I don't want to prohibit hotels, true hotels being developed. I would like to have a tighter restriction on properties that were converted, like we found south of Fifth. Those aren't hotels, right? They're short-term rentals. So if you can help us manage through that, so we come up with some good legislation.
Okay. Do you want to continue this to the July meeting so that we can have a little bit more time to work on that?
Because here's one of the things that is in the back of my mind. If I think about North Beach, a number of years ago, we permitted short-term rentals on some older, kind of rundown properties, and they were quite successful. Some properties that were 2-3-story buildings that were challenging rental units, and you had a lot of transient type activity going there. Someone bought the buildings, converted them into essentially hotels, short-term rentals, and they've developed quite nicely. I don't want to necessarily prohibit that, but I do want to prohibit what we found in the south of Fifth neighborhood, where you've got massive transient use potentially in a residential neighborhood, and nobody saw it coming. So things like, for me, on-site security, on-site property management, the kind of things that you would find in a true hotel. Okay.
All right, so we'll show this by acclamation, continued to the July 7th meeting.
Okay. Anybody else here? I want to get some folks out. I know we have staff been waiting. Oh, you asked for number 25. I apologize.
26. Yeah, and actually Raquel, our Economic Development Director, is here for it as well.
The woman who's constantly saving her boss.
She is amazing. And Mr. Chair, thank you for calling this item. You may recall back on April 6th, I placed a referral to this committee to explore ways in which we could create an incentive program. At our last City Commission meeting, we approved the expansion of the Art Deco MIMO overlay with your support to pretty much to address some of these nuisance non-conforming uses, like the packaged liquor stores, the smoke shops, the tattoo parlors, and other types of uses that to keep them from further proliferation of the district. The problem is that once we pass such a zoning ordinance, we won't get new ones, but we still have those that exist continuing to exist as a legally non-conforming use. And the question then becomes, how do we incentivize the transition of a legal non-conforming use to a main allowed use under the zoning code? How do we attract unique retail activity, positive experiences that enhance our image as a city, that promotes arts and culture, and that promote positive commercial activity in our city? And I'm very excited with the work that Raquel has done in putting together this proposal that she's going to present to us in response to this referral. And so I'd like to recognize Raquel to walk us through what she's prepared.
Thank you, Commissioner Fernandez. Good morning, Chair and Commissioners. Raquel Williams, Economic Development Director. So as this body is the same composition as the Finance Committee, you may recall that on March 30th, the administration did sort of tee up a commercial lease subsidy program, which had been approved in the fiscal year 2022 budget as a pilot program. We indicated that we would be working with Commissioner Fernandez based on his April 6th referral to this committee to create this incentive program. We found that the vision of the commercial lease subsidy program to incorporate more arts and culture centered businesses in the ADCD and the encouragement of permitted uses rather than legal non-conforming uses were pretty much in alignment. So we thought that the program could be merged to fulfill both purposes. Essentially, we would incentivize property owners or businesses and reimburse their rent if they were to transition from a legal non-conforming use to a permitted use, or if they would incorporate an establishment that would have arts and culture as the basis of the business, including experiential or artisanal retail or some low-scale gallery or art-centered business. We proposed that we would provide a reimbursement of $2,500 per month for up to $20,000 per year over 3 years. We would also waive the business license renewal fee for a 3-year period. In further discussion with Commissioner Fernandez, he indicated wanting to ensure that we sort of had a match, and so we could reimburse for up to 50% of the annual rent or mortgage payment, not going above the $2,500 amount per month, and certainly not exceeding the $20,000 per year. I do want to point out we have listed approximately 116 legal nonconforming uses in the district. It's important to note that souvenir shops do not have a specific designation on the BTR records, so there would be additional legal nonconforming uses if we included the souvenir shops. We do not have a current tally of where they are, and so I just wanted you to know that it's more than 116.
Colleagues? So I commend you in trying to accelerate the reuse and repurposing of some of these, quote unquote nuisance retail. I'm supportive. What would be the fiscal impact of this? So we would say maximum $2,500 a month, and what was the cap per year?
$20,000 per year.
20,000.
We currently have $40,000 approved based on this year's budget. So if this was sent to the commission for approval, we would implement the program this fiscal year. We're also requesting as an enhancement $120,000 for fiscal year 2023. Of course, that's subject to commission approval.
So is it basically, if we were to approve the upper threshold of, let's say, the 120, it's first come, first served. Once the money runs out, then we. So
correct.
If all 116 stores wanted to avail themselves of it, they couldn't because we would run out of money.
That is correct. Okay. When we originally conceptualized the program for arts and culture types of businesses, we didn't anticipate that we would get a lot of traction, but since we are now merging it to facilitate this purpose, we wanted to have additional dollars. This would still be sort of a pilot program. $120,000 isn't going to make a huge dent on the 116 legal non-conforming uses that exist, but we're hoping that we can make some incremental changes.
Give us an example of how this would work. So let's say I am, because this really only applies so much to the tenants, less the property owners, because if they have an existing lease, the property owner can't force them out. So if I'm a vape shop and I hear about this,
I would want to say, I'm not going to terminate my lease. I'll just say, oh, I'm not going to be a vape shop. I'm going to open an arts gallery.
Correct. So
And in return for that, the city will pay $2,500 of your rent.
Correct. So part of the application process would include evidence of a BTR showing a legal conforming use. And so whether it was the tenant or the property owner that was operating the business at that property, that's what we would want to see. Also, if there's a current use that isn't arts and culture centered, but they wanted to bring in a business that operated a type of business that we'd like to see there, then they would also qualify. But we need to see a BTR and a certificate of use that would show that it's a permitted use.
It's an interesting idea. I mean, given there's 116 stores, I think there's enough there that you might get a couple that try it.
Mr. Chair.
So, would this roll from year to year? So, someone's going to make a decision that they want to try it out, right? So, could they reverse their decision? And once they decide, would the city then be making a commitment to provide this funding through the life of the lease, or what if the lease is renewed?
So it would be for a 3-year period maximum. The funding request is a recurring one so that we'd have enough money for the 3 fiscal years, but it's based on the annual budgeting allocation based on the city commission's discretion. So we would incorporate that into the agreement that the city would not be held responsible for ensuring that that is budgeted, but of course the administration would recommend it, and hopefully the city commission would approve such budgeting every fiscal year.
And it would be $2,500 a month?
Up to.
So that's 30. If somebody did that, that's $30,000 a year, and then the budget. What would that take care of?
It would be up to $2,500 a month, but not to exceed $20,000 for the year, and it would be capped at 50% of whatever the rent or lease payment was for that month.
Okay. So potentially, with what the funding request for the next fiscal year would be, how much? 150? Did you say?
120,000.
120. So basically, it might help 6 or 7 or 8, something like that, depending on what the request would be. So I like this idea. I think it's a good pilot. I think we should try it. If it's successful, maybe we would want to even increase the dollar amount to help more. So.
And part of the idea in this, I at the beginning when we were discussing this, I was thinking, why should it be the government, subsidizing this? It's like we want property owners to be responsible and property owners to attract good tenants, but sometimes you need that carrot, and I feel that this is almost like that carrot. And in my mind, how I see it is that transitioning these uses also hopefully improves the property values, contribute towards enhancements in property values there, which also then ultimately means more money for the city. And so it made me feel good about making this initial investment to initiate a pilot, and hopefully it is successful, so that we can get rid of some of these 28 tattoo establishments, 9 fortune tellers. I mean, like, really, fortune tellers, pawnbrokers. I mean, it's like, really.
Thank you for being innovative on this, and I'm willing to try it for sure. The point you made, why would government do this? We're calling these nuisance businesses. Just like government is responsible for removing nuisances, whether it's a dilapidated building that we issue a demolition permit for, or other unsafe structures, or an abandoned property that needs to be cleaned up, and the government ultimately ends up being responsible. We're trying to create an incentive to remove some of these businesses that residents aren't. I don't know. There's a huge demand for these palm readers. Always been a mystery to me. But if we can convert them to art galleries and stuff, and these entrepreneurs, if they have an incentive, say, I'm not willing to take a risk to open an arts and crafts store because the little I make doing palm readings, but hey, maybe I convert it to something. It's worth a shot, so I support it. Thank you, colleagues. We're running up against.
Mr. Chair,
I'm sorry.
Yep. fully supportive, very creative approach using incentives. Sometimes we need the stick, and sometimes the carrot is the right approach. I like it's a pilot, so it sunsets, which is going to be a catalyst for people to do something. The one thing I think I'd like to think more about as we proceed is what the uses that would qualify. Arts and culture sounds great, but maybe there's some other uses that aren't exactly arts and culture, but are better than a tattoo shop. And so I just ask you to give that thought.
I agree. I completely agree with you, Commissioner. Thank you.
Yeah, no, it's a good point out. Colleagues, I know we have sort of a self-imposed 3-hour deadline, and I want to try to get there. So if you have any items that you're sponsoring that you don't mind deferring, I'll take volunteers. I'll defer the only other one I have, which is item 14. So anybody else?
Number
Commissioner,
4, I'll defer.
I did hear from the sponsor for item number 5, and he's deferred that to the June 1 meeting. That's item 5 regarding certificates of appropriateness.
Okay, thank you.
And I'm going to have to
And
be
4.
leaving soon, so number 9 you can defer.
Number 9 will be deferred. Thank you.
And then 14, you're going to defer to the next meeting, correct?
Yes.
Okay. And then Commissioner Fernandez, number 9, you want to defer that to the June meeting as well?
Yeah, because I'm going to have to be leaving soon, and so I would defer 9, 11, 13. Let's see.
You have item 15, vitamin shops.
Oh.
We can take that up if you
Yeah,
want.
I would like to
Okay,
take
we'll
that
keep
up.
that because that's related to what we just did.
I'll stick around for a few minutes.
Okay, so that was helpful. And
And you got number 4, Mr. Chair.
yes, Commissioner Samuelin volunteered to defer item 14.
I'm sorry,
number 4. Number 4.
Yep. And can we hear number 6 real quick?
We're going to hear number 6 right now.
Perfect.
And yes,
Before we get to number 6, number 26, did you want to conclude that item regarding the incentive program and send that to the full commission, or do you want to discuss that some more at committee?
You guys would make a motion, I'd support
Yeah,
it. I mean, I can't support it.
Thank you, Tom. We didn't actually make a motion, but I think Commissioner.
Yeah, so, no, I'm supportive. So, yeah, I'll make a motion that we move it out of committee with a favorable recommendation, and also support the administration's proposal for a funding request for the next fiscal year of $120,000. I don't know if we, let's send it back to the
Was it
commission.
120 or was it 150?
I think it
It was 120, unless you're recommending 150.
No, 120 sounds good.
And I'll second that.
Okay. Keep it at 120. If it's successful, we'll ask for more money.
Sounds good. Thank you, guys.
Okay, thank you. Okay, I had a request for item numbers. Now, colleagues, our colleague Commissioner Rosa Gonzalez is not here for number 17. We can hear it or we can defer it and ask her to join us because she's the sponsor. I'm going to ask that we defer this. Just in the interest of time.
And I only have one item 18, but I can do that very quickly.
Okay. Let's do number 6, just so
Great.
housekeeping. We have 6, 18, 15, and that's it. So
Perfect.
we might hit to 12:30.
So on number 6, colleagues, we had a very good discussion about the opportunity to have some sort of demolition fee. Today we don't have a demolition fee. Here was the spirit of the conversation, based on my recollection, that there was a very creative notion by my colleagues that whatever fees collected could then be applied for incentives for historic preservation. So sort of taking those funds and applying them creatively. We wanted the administration to do a little benchmarking, ideally of cities with similar property values, and come back to us with a number of what that fee could be. I believe there's been a meeting of the minds of the community, or at least a few folks of the community. Tom, could you pick it up from there with the recommendation?
Sure. This came before you, this has actually been before you on a number of occasions, and we were directed to do some research on what other cities have done in terms of demolition fees, and we brought a proposal to you on April, which was deferred in order for the sponsor to do some more community outreach. So the revised proposal basically would essentially do the following, and it's included in the draft ordinance to Appendix A. First is it would establish a demolition fee of $25,000 for all single-family demolition, and demolition would be considered the demolition of more than 50% of a home. So if somebody's demolishing a rear portion of a home to do an addition, this wouldn't apply. But if it's more than 50%, then this demolition fee would apply. Secondly, it would apply to all properties regardless of years of construction. Even though most of the demolition that we're seeing is for homes prior to 1966, the demolition of homes does create impacts on the environment. And so even if you're demolishing a home constructed after that date, the recommendation is that that would apply to the demolition of all homes. The funds generated by the demolition fee would go directly to an established historic preservation fund. Previously, we had suggested that we could also explore affordable housing and resiliency as other purposes, but I believe the sponsor would like to make this specific to historic preservation fund. The demolition fee would not be applicable when it involves the construction of low or moderate income housing. So they would not have to pay a $25,000 demolition fee. Additional analysis would be needed as it pertains to the administration of this fee program. That's not something that we would need to do post haste, because if Appendix A went into effect, say, in the early fall, we would begin to collect that money prospectively. However, within a couple of years, this fund likely would begin to grow at $25,000 per home demolished. So we would need to develop a structure for the disbursement of the funds and how we would want to spend the funds. If there's consensus on this, we can bring the first reading ordinance to the City Commission. Because this is not an LDR amendment, it does not require a referral to the Planning Board.
So, let me just ask a couple of questions in that. What's the public policy purpose? Is it to slow down demolitions? Is it to raise money? Some combination?
I think that from what we can tell, we believe that the public policy purpose would be to address the impacts of demolition. So I don't believe that people who are demolishing homes would be dissuaded from demolishing the home because of a fee, whether it's $15,000 or $25,000. I think that they would build that into the overall cost of permitting and construction. But what we believe the fee could do is provide prospectively a fund for efforts that would aid people that perhaps want to keep their home and who might be eligible to use funds to retain a home or improve upon or renovate an existing home.
And what is the impact? You said that a demolition of a home creates impacts, environmental impacts, or?
Yeah, whenever you demolish a home, obviously there's an enormous amount of work that goes into the overall demolition of a home, because you've got to remove everything from the interior, you've got to demolish the entire home, remove all the debris from the site, and then at that point you would be constructing a brand new home. Environmentally, renovating a home or doing a small addition to a home has less of an impact than the full demolition of a home.
So is the primary impact of a demolition an environmental impact?
I think it's probably part environmental impact, and then it's also impact on the surrounding area, and then it's an impact potentially on the surrounding area as it applies to the effect that bringing debris out of site could have on both the immediate site as well as the surrounding site.
The reason I'm asking is because I'm trying to understand if we're going to have a fee, then what we would do with the money. So if the primary impact is the environment, then it seems that we would use the funds to apply towards environmental initiatives, right? If that's what we're trying to do. If the goal is to reduce the number of demolitions because of historic preservation, then perhaps we put the money towards historic preservation. I don't know. That's what I'm trying to understand. And do other, I read through this very briefly, other cities have demolition fees in the range of what's being proposed?
Yeah, what we had initially recommended when we brought the memo to you in April was a fee of $15,000. That seemed to be the average price for cities similar to Miami Beach. The sponsor did have some discussions with the community with further outreach, and the sponsor requested that be increased to $25,000.
And 100% of the funds would go towards historic preservation?
Correct, as currently proposed.
And why wouldn't we allocate anything towards environmental issues?
You could. We had initially suggested that it could be allocated toward affordable or workforce housing or for resiliency purposes.
So I think this is Commissioner Samuelin's item.
Right? So I have a question.
Why don't we wait till he gets back, and then maybe he can explain why, what the 25 versus the 15, and also the use of the funds.
Yeah, so I mean, the difference financially is moving into 20?
25.
25 from 15. And I think there's some legal concern we can't go too far, right?
Right. The amount of the fee should be generally proportionate to the issue we're trying to address. So if the issue is, environmental impact of demolition, as Commissioner Richardson asked, then obviously we'll want to make sure that amount is proportionate to the impact.
Okay. How long ago, if you know, was the 15,000 threshold set?
The 15,000 threshold, I think, is what Tom identified in other jurisdictions, but we don't currently have
we don't even have
a demolition fee like this.
Got it. Yeah. We don't have any demolition fee?
We have just the normal permitting fees associated with it.
How much is the permit fee?
Tom, do you know the answer to that?
I don't know. It's it's been the same permitting fee, but there's not a special higher fee. It's demolition is part of the overall cost of the permit for the new construction.
And I would just add, if we're looking for this fee to go toward historic preservation projects, then I think we should articulate how demolitions of homes prior to 50 years old impact the city's architectural heritage, because I think that record will be important.
Sure. And so this demolition fee is only for older homes? Is that what?
No. Well, no. As proposed, it would apply to any home.
So home.
Any home.
What about? And this doesn't. This would not include an apartment renovation.
No, this would be single-family homes in RS districts.
Which at this point they're so expensive that a $15,000 or $25,000 is. I mean, $1 million home, which is a lot of money. $25,000 is a meaningful percent of a tear down.
Mr. Chair.
Okay. Yeah.
Thank you for that question, because it was kind of the question that I had. I support this, and I think I support this when we're talking about homes that are historic in character, that are the older homes, pre-42 homes. But my concern is that we have some homes that don't reach that threshold. And I think recently, I remember when I was still on the planning board, there being a conversation about a home that wasn't really that old, that was seeking some sort of approval from the planning board, because it was going to be demolished and then something new was going to be built there. But the home was probably like 10 years old. And it was the type of thing that I felt, if a home is not historic in nature, but it was built at a time where perhaps resiliency was not taken into consideration, where perhaps there was not as much green space, where perhaps there was more concrete, I think it's the type of thing we should take into consideration, because maybe, newer homes, the funds maybe should be shared partially with resiliency, partially with historic preservation, and then say that the fees from any pre-42 home go completely towards historic preservation. But for newer homes, maybe split that, so that we also do continue contributing to some of our resiliency efforts that we currently do have on the code, and I would feel a little bit more comfortable with that. I mean, I know my parents' house is from the 80s, and back in the 80s, they would build stuff and with not a lot of green space, and then we put too much concrete, and I would say, might be good to to have some of these funds towards efforts that contribute as well to resiliency. So that's my thoughts on that.
And do we know how? We don't know how much the permit fee is. I thought it was rather substantial to do a demolition.
Those are issued by the building department. I just don't know. I don't know if Tom or Eric can.
Yeah, I don't know the fees offhand. A lot of it is based upon valuation, and so, but I don't know what the fee would be if somebody was. The new construction is based upon valuation. The cost of the permit from new construction is based upon valuation. I don't know whether or not there's a separate building permit fee, administrative fee, if total demolition is proposed as well.
I believe there is. That's important.
I'm sure there is a demolition fee. I don't think it's this high.
No, but I don't know if it's 5,000, and then adding this would make 30,000. And I don't know why 25 is a flat versus maybe a percentage of the assessed value, because 25,000 on a $5 million might not be that much, but 25,000 on $500,000 is substantial. So, I mean, these are the kind of questions I think we should get answered. I don't know. I'm in favor of deferring the item and doing more work on it so we can get some of these. I like the idea. I'd like to explore whether or not, rather than a flat fee of whether it's 15 or 25, maybe having a percentage of assessed value. And
we
also
did look at a percentage, and it became very difficult to find a percentage amount because you didn't know, because initially we had looked at, say, do you base it on a percentage of the size of the home? Most of the homes are small. Do you base it on the percentage of the size of the lot? Some lots are ginormous. Other lots are much smaller. The assessed value can fluctuate. What we found in our research was that most people did a flat fee.
And assessed value can vary depending on whether or not someone has a homestead on it or not have. But, I mean, it seems to me I need some questions on the
existing demolition fees.
Yeah, the permit fees. How substantial is that? And then I want us to explore a little bit more how we would split the potential fee between resiliency, if we're really trying to address environmental concerns, and historic preservation, which I think is equally as important. And then the fee itself, if it's a percentage or if it's a flat fee, because you can have a very, very big lot and then have a small house on it, and then you could have a very small lot and a big house, and they would pay the same fee. So those are kind of questions that I have. Of course, we'd love to hear from Daniel. Hi.
Thank you.
Did you make a motion? I made the motion to defer it.
Okay, and I'm going to second it.
Not to defer it, but to keep it in committee.
Yeah,
so we can get.
I want to come up with the right schedule, and I want to wait for our colleagues.
And we're going
to come back.
We're going to defer it to July 7th so that we have enough time to come back with this information.
Yeah.
Thank you, Commissioners. First of all, we're Daniel Serraldo with Miami Design Preservation League. It's good news now also in light of the Aspen Climate Change Summit here that this commission is looking to add some sort of demo fee. I will give you just one example. There was a couple of homes that were purchased at 1753 Northview Drive in Miami Beach, and I think it was for around $40 million. 2 pre-42 homes were demolished, and the demo fee was $3,500. So I think that there might be some room with this city's involvement in a better demolition fee. I really like the idea. I think Commissioner Richardson was mentioning the impact on the environment, and maybe the fee could have something to do with the size of the square footage, which could be quantified as far as its environmental impact, and might encourage some sort of sustainability funding for that. And if you want it to be not just historic preservation and also resiliency, that sounds good too. You know, the idea is just to have some sort of funding that can go into things that can help with resiliency going forward. So I think it's a great idea to continue it and to develop it further and hopefully come up with something good. I did want to mention that when we had first met with the developer side, the number was starting at 50,000 for the large waterfront homes. And you can imagine those are, many, many millions. So I understand the planning department suggested 15 flat out, but maybe there is some room for variability based on things like you all were mentioned. So thank you for keeping it alive, and hopefully we could come to...
So Daniel, let me ask you, mentioned square footage. Are you talking about the square footage of the improvement or the square footage of the lot size, or both? Or...
I'm not sure. That's a good question. It might be the square footage of what's proposed to replace it, or it might be what is there. But I can't think... It's a very good idea what you mentioned, so I think it...
Tom, that's another... So put that on the list for as we continue talking about this, for you to think about that, because I think it's a good point.
Which one is that? The percentage based on lot size?
If it would be percentage of lot size, percentage of the existing structure, or the square footage of the new improvement. I mean, those are all things. How should we get to a fee? I'm not wild about the idea of just having a flat fee for any structure, and also there is an argument that a waterfront, obviously would have more concerns in terms of the impact on the environment. So we should think about all those things.
Yeah, good point. Yeah.
Just real quick, Mr. Chairman, Michael Larkin, 3538 Flamingo Drive. Here as a resident, member of the real estate development community. I probably represent more single-family homeowners from the DRB than any other attorney. And I've been working closely with Daniel on this demolition fee. We support it in general. You all have made a number of requests that it be refined, and I support those, especially Commissioner Richardson's idea that a reallocation be made to the environment. I was just Google searching the amount of carbon dioxide emissions created by the demo process, and I thought to myself, well, great, then let's plant more trees, because trees soak up the carbon dioxide. So I think there is a correlation. I just started Google searching, and I promise I'll have better research when I come back. So thank you.
That's a great idea.
Mr. Chairman, we have two
maybe,
callers on Zoom.
Yeah, it's a great idea. Maybe, keep it in the neighborhood in which the property is being demolished.
I like that too.
I want to keep everything open, but one of the struggles I have when we create these funds is then the allocation of who gets the money and how much. An idea like that takes it out of our hands.
We have two callers on Zoom. The first is Elizabeth Latone.
Good morning, Elizabeth.
Hi, good morning. How are you? I pulled over my car, so if you can't hear me, please let me know. We currently have zero demolition fees. That is absolutely unacceptable, especially in a historic preservation city like ours. I am all for however it is come up with, but we've got to have one. And I'm even going to suggest, I like Commissioner Fernandez's comment about splitting it. But honestly, if I've got a waterfront home and I'm going to demolish it, $25,000 is going to be pittance to me. I think it should be based on the land value, but that's just me. I've only been in real estate for 30 years, but I just want to let you know y'all got to do something, and the same for historic hotels. Thank you.
Next caller.
The next caller is Wayne Roberts.
I just want to, commend you guys for thinking about the impact that home demolishing has on the environment and the city and the neighbors, and that a small fee would certainly make sense in 100% of the cases as it impacts the residents and the community. I'm not against tearing down old homes that are inferior and past its time, but in a lot of cases, the recent event with Al Capone's home, and it just seems like it's out of control. But as it relates to expenses, I think it should be a percentage of what the home improvement is. But $25,000 as a minimum certainly would make sense. Thank you.
Okay, anybody else? Okay, so We'll defer this. You'll do some work on this, Tom?
Yeah, we're going to continue this by acclamation to
I'm sorry, I just said we'll continue this.
July 7th meeting.
And at that time, you're going to come back with more conversation about these things we raised, right?
Correct.
Okay, perfect.
Okay.
I think I can do
Okay.
my item quickly.
Yeah, please. What number is that? 18? 18?
So 18, this could be one of those things that we could spend hours on, but this is just to tee it up today. I am very interested in trying to figure out whether there are some incentives that we could develop that would encourage some of the folks in the entertainment district to get out of their current business and get into a new business. And Tom, I don't know if you've had a chance to think about this item that's been referred.
Yeah, we've come up with well, there's a couple things. As you're aware, there is an ordinance that's pending before the commission that could potentially slightly increase allowable heights on the east side of Collins Avenue. At first reading, the City Commission deferred action on that and referred it to the Historic Preservation Board, but the commission also asked the administration to have a much broader discussion with the Historic Preservation Board regarding these types of incentives. We kickstarted that conversation at their April meeting. They're going to think about it, and they're going to reinitiate that conversation at their June meeting. And so we anticipate having further discussions with the Historic Preservation Board. We would like to bring their recommendations back to you. The other things that we have looked at are things like developing tools and options to incentivize the adaptive reuse of these buildings in order to ensure their long-term viability. So these buildings have gone through a number of iterations over their time, including hotel, apartment. Some have been converted to museums. So we think that there's some things that we can look at there. The other would be the use of FAR, height, and other zoning incentives, including transfers of development rights, to further incentivize the adaptive reuse of those buildings. And so these are things that we can further develop. I think in order to further the conversation, I suggest that we continue this to the July meeting so that we can come back to you with some of the suggestions of the Historic Preservation Board and further develop some of these ideas.
I think that's a great idea, so I'll move that we can continue it and bring it back in July. In the meantime, I'm happy to meet with you. We should think about also if there's something that we want to put on the referendum in November, something that would address this. I feel strongly that, first of all, I'm going to say that I'm never going to support anything that will change the front face of Ocean Drive, the facade, because I want that preserved forever and more. But if there's something that we can do on the rear portions or in combination with Collins Avenue, and I'm only having this conversation as it relates to facilitating a business to get out of their existing business in exchange for some benefit. So I'm not looking at other things right now, although I think that it's a broader question that at some point we're going to have to look at the zoning on Ocean Drive if we want more mixed use and that sort of thing. But specifically, and I can put on the record, I've said publicly, I had a meeting with the Clevelander 2 weeks ago to ask them if they are willing to entertain a change in their business model. I have been public that I think that on Ocean Drive that is one of our biggest concerns because of the nature of the outdoor entertainment. Not criticizing what goes on the property, but what's happening is it's creating a carnival atmosphere off the property as people want to participate in the entertainment climate, and so I think the city would be well served to look at alternatives there. So with that, I'll move that we continue it, if that's okay with my colleagues, until July.
Second.
Okay, let's do it.
Mr. Chair?
Oh.
Yeah. And I want to just speak on this a little bit, Commissioner, just because if we do want to see that transition, I think in that transition of current uses, your item is speaking about the redevelopment of hotels as residential or office space, and I think it's very smart to have this conversation. I too had a conversation with our attorneys and the Clevelander about something similar, about speaking with them about if they would be willing, not just to give up their hotel uses. My conversation with them was see if they're voluntarily willing to give up alcohol uses in exchange for something like what you're proposing. I think these are the type of incentives we have to be looking at if we are serious about improving our brand and doing away with some of the issues that have caused problems in our community. So I look forward to the continuation of this item, and I just wanted to put on the record as well, since you did, I also had a conversation with a Clevelander through our attorneys on this specific issue, because at the end of the day, if we are serious about going away, let's say, from a 5 a.m. model to a different type of model in a less litigious way, I think that this is a good avenue to explore.
And to be clear, when I said a change in the business model, I'm glad you expressed it so clearly, because that's exactly what I'm talking about. I'm focused at this point in looking at a change in business model that would get someone out of the 5 a.m. in a way that we can try to move forward without litigation. And so forth. So with that, we're going to continue it. So thank you, Chair.
Yeah, so I think personally this is one of the most important things we'll be deciding upon. One, because it could potentially truly change the tide on, the misbehavior we see on Ocean Drive, if we can just repurpose a lot of the uses, right, so that it addresses the crime and misbehavior we're all trying to get under control. It might even eliminate or water down the whole 2 a.m. discussion, but it's also potentially impacting or will impact, one of our most important historic districts in the city, and our calling card to the world, which is Ocean Drive. So I suspect this will be a very, very long discussion, very heated. But I think we need to get it going sooner rather than later. I see, Daniel, you're here, and my ask of you, given your stewardship of MDPL, which I know will be very vocal on this, is to work with us, right? Rather than just and I'm not saying you would, take a no position, try to help us navigate this.
Yes, thank you, Commissioner Daniel Seraldo. I think it's an interesting topic. I don't want to say anything more. Like the other day on Facebook, someone said, oh, we support height increases on Ocean Drive. And just to be clear, we have not...
You mean stuff on Facebook's not always true?
Not always, yeah. I'm learning now myself. But I did have, as part of this analysis, which is important, the question that we would like to know if the city could provide it is what is the FAR on these different sites currently developed and what is allowed, what is the unused FAR, because these are things that are important for us to figure out. As an example with the Clevelander, that building that's on 10th Street facing 10th, it looks Art Deco, but that was a new addition where the ESPN studio is, so that's not protected. So those are the sort of things we'll have to know a little more about, like what's available now, what may be something that they'd want to do, and then figuring out how to fit it all in. But, it's definitely just a discussion. It's not like everything is changing right now, but I think it is a worthy discussion to have. So thank you.
Quick question, just point of information, because, similar to the discussion I had with the Clevelander, I had it with the owner of quite a controversial hotel on West Avenue, which you probably all know, can figure out which one it is, the most controversial small little hotel on West Avenue. That's also interested in something like this. And I'm just wondering, is this item just for the MXC or just MXC? Okay. And because we may want to have a discussion on, thank you.
Yeah, I'll throw in a couple things, particularly on Ocean Drive, that have always bothered me from way, way back. We have properties there that, particularly on the northern end of Ocean Drive, that the buildings, to me, they're not pretty, they're not historic, at least in my estimation, that have become timeshares. That many, many years ago, during the heyday, big chains bought them and turned them into timeshares. They don't contribute anything. They're not great hotels. They're basically short-term rentals. They're ugly buildings. but they're timeshare, so the ownership characteristic is somewhat unique. I don't know if we can create some legislation to create incentives to, disassemble the timeshare model and put those properties into play so they can be developed into true hotels or apartments or something else. I don't know if you have any thoughts on that, but you know what I'm talking about. There's a handful of buildings up there that just are awful, I think.
Yeah, there's three of them: the McAlpin, the Oceanside, and one of the things about those is that you can't even get into their historic lobbies because of that. So,
yeah, because there's no ownership group. Yeah. There's hundreds or thousands of fractional owners in those properties, and so I don't even know how you you can decondo things. I don't know how you disassemble a timeshare arrangement, but to me, they don't contribute anything, and I'd love to see those things be redeveloped into something more useful. That all predated Airbnb, Okay, colleagues, is that it? No, I think we have item 15.
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Item number 15. I place item number 15 on the agenda just because I'm very concerned with a pattern that I've seen on some of our major thoroughfares and pedestrian areas, including Lincoln Road. And what I've seen is, specifically on Lincoln Road, all of a sudden, there's this proliferation of these CBD and THC stores. And, one is fine, two, whatever, but now it's like the other day I was walking and I saw the third one in like a 2-block area, and quite frankly, it's tacky. It's very tacky. And I'm not sure, is this really what we want a street like Lincoln Road to be? We're getting ready to invest some major public dollars there towards the improvement of Lincoln Road, and for what? For CBD and more THC stores. I certainly don't think that that's consistent with the image we want to be putting forward or the city we want to be building. So I met with staff, with our attorneys, and with planning, and of course there's certain issues and concerns in place because these stores, they're classified as vitamin shops. And correct me, Nick, if I'm wrong, but staff has helped put together some potential points that we may want to pass along for an ordinance. And Tom, I don't know if you want to walk us through those points.
I can do this very briefly. They're in the memo, and what it would do is we would amend the LDRs to create a couple of different sections. One, we would obviously have to create a definition for vitamin stores, and this would include things like nutritional supplement stores, your larger vitamin stores, your larger nutritional stores, as well as the smaller mom and pop type ones. Secondly, we would establish a new area for vitamin stores for regulation purposes in Division 12 of Chapter 142 to create regulations for vitamin shops where they are the primary use, as well as when they are an accessory use. We could also set forth distance separation requirements between vitamin stores, and as well as between vitamin stores and schools. And we could also create standards for determining these distance separations. With regard to those vitamin stores where the supplements and things like that are accessory, like Publix, Walgreens, they would not be subject to the distance separation requirements. However, they would not be able to have things like exterior signage, and their merchandise would not be visible from the right-of-way. And then lastly, we could consider amending certain zoning district regulations, for instance, the CD3 district along Lincoln Road, to prohibit these types of uses so that they don't have a detrimental impact on there. These can all be placed into an ordinance if it's the will of the Land Use Committee. We could draft an ordinance and bring it to the City Commission for a referral to the Planning Board, or we could bring a draft ordinance back to you at your July meeting, whatever you prefer.
And Mr. Chair, and if I may, one of the things that I don't want to do is, wait until this proliferation further extends. But also, I want to be cautious that we don't move the problem or move the concentration of these establishments from one area to the city. And so now we limit it on Lincoln Road, and then now we start to see a proliferation of them on Alton Road, and then we see a proliferation of them somewhere else, because that could happen. And so if you all would be so inclined, I would love for staff to work on an ordinance to bring back that this committee could take a look at and make sure that we're not creating unintended consequences here, but still achieves the objective of reducing the amount of these stores that we're seeing pop up throughout the city.
And keep it in committee here for now.
That's what I'm. Yeah.
Yes. So I would move that for staff to work on a draft ordinance, bring it back to the committee for consideration. I think it's something we should look at. And all the things that Commissioner Fernandez said that you should consider, and the things you mentioned, Tom, as well. So I'd love to see a draft of it.
And I'll second that. These CBD stores, in some way, have some overlap with medical marijuana dispensaries. And we had a very thoughtful conversation about how to protect ourselves from that. So congrats to the sponsor for bringing that forward, and we'll carry on the conversation.
Yeah, Tom, another thing you might want to consider is there are going to be future changes in state law regarding cannabis and so forth. And so we can't anticipate what all those changes are going to be, but we should be forward-thinking and try to anticipate, some of the unintended consequences that might occur when some of these changes happen, I think, in the very near future.
Yeah, agreed. Yeah, I mean, look, I think a lot... It might become federalized, which means Walgreens and CVS can start selling a lot of this, and a lot is going to be even more available via mail order and stuff like that. So just just be mindful, if you have a proliferation of these stores, it probably is going to be unnecessary for people who need access to these things. So better take a slow approach, because I don't think access is going to be the problem.
Right, and access is not the problem. My concern is when you have an area like Lincoln Road, where you want to have perhaps more upscale, more curated type of retail, and then now all of a sudden, it's not the product that's the problem, but it's that now you have there's on Lincoln Road, like literally, you go to Lincoln Road, I think it's east of Meridian, there are 2 storefronts back to back with this, and then you go the next block and you have another one. It's like, yeah. Thank you, guys.
Colleagues, sorry for running over, but we got a lot accomplished today. Everyone be well. Have a great weekend.
Well, thank you.